parcel to do the infrastructure, and 50,000 would drive any low-income person out of that park. So how do we exempt them?
Can I get a copy of the agenda? What they're going to do? They're going to tie all these improvements into homework.
Okay.
Can I have that? Thank you. Great.
Welcome to the August 13th meeting of the Capitola City Council. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Harlan. Here. Councilmember Bottorff. Here. Councilmember Bertrand.
Here.
Councilmember Termini.
Here.
Mayor Norton.
Here. Stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have two presentations to make this evening in recognition of Police Administrative Assistant Lori Wilson and Police Volunteer Dave Dominguez. Could David and Lori please come up here and join me? Thank you.
Imagine this party.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Rudy? We have a number of warehouses here. I'm going to read through them because they are important, and then we'll pass the mic around and get some input from our helmet crew here. Where's the dog, dude?
Home sleeping.
Okay. In recognition of Police Administrative Assistant Lori Wilson and Police Volunteer David Dominguez for their participation in the City of Capitola's Bicycle Helmet Distribution Program, whereas the City of Capitola Police Administrative Assistant Lori Wilson and Police Volunteer Dave Dominguez have been instrumental in providing assistance in the distribution of bike helmets to protect citizenry in the City of Capitola. Whereas injuries suffered while riding a bicycle lead to 500,000 emergency room visits, wow, 52,000 serious injuries, and over 700 deaths annually nationwide. Whereas according to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, 70% of fatal bicycle accidents were caused by head injuries, and 90% of those deaths among bicycles were for not wearing helmets. Whereas to reduce the number of heads and brain injuries, the City of Capitola, that is a good thing to do, I think. The City of Capitola opened its free bicycle helmet distribution program. And how long has this been going on for now, Dave?
Yeah, I think it was about 9 months.
9 months, okay. Whereas creating bicycle-friendly communities have been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, to boost community spirit, and to improve traffic safety, and to reduce pollution and congestion. And whereas the education of bicyclists and motorists as to the proper and safe operation of bicycles is important to ensure the safety and comfort of its users. Whereas the Capitola City Police Department acquired over 100 bicycle helmets for youth under the age of 17. And whereas Lori and David have generously offered their time to provide helmets to numerous youths. Now, therefore, I, Dennis Norton, Mayor Capitola, City of Capitola, on behalf of the entire City Council, hereby express sincere thanks and appreciation to Lori Wilson and Dave Dominguez for their participation in the city's bicycle helmet distribution program. Thank you. Okay.
That's Davis.
So we'll get some shots here. So we take pictures. Okay.
Someone take a picture.
So, stand up if you wear a bicycle helmet when you ride your bike. Stand up if you should wear a bicycle helmet when you
Let's get it real. If you wished you had.
Just a quick one. The
Actually, I
bicycle
have
helmets
seen
are
Oh.
also multi-sport, so they're skateboarder and bicycle. We've had a number of adults come into the program, and we're actually the second largest distribution center in the county now for helmets since we opened up. Yeah, so we're getting a pretty good response. Yeah.
Great
job
job
by
by them.
Thank you to our volunteers and police department. Do we have a report on closed session, please?
Oh, we have an introduction first, Mayor.
Oh, we do, I'm sorry. Ready? Oh, we hired somebody, you guys are up. Okay.
Mayor and members of council, it's with great honor that I introduce you to our newest member of the finance staff, our new account technician, Maura Herlihy. She started in July. She's taking over the payroll and accounts payable functions for the city. Maura has a great long history in the profession. We're really excited that she decided to come work for the City of Capitola. Most recently, she served as the executive director of the Hawaii Island Sustainability Organization, an independent development and support provider for a variety of small business, nonprofit, and startup entities. Just very excited that she decided to join us.
Hi, just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here. You have a remarkable city and wonderful staff. I'm happy to be a part of the team. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Welcome. And if you notice the family resemblance next to the young woman she's sitting next to, it is, there is a family resemblance. Yay, team. All right.
I'd like to praise.
about that.
I'd like to praise her sacrifice and sense of giving for giving of her life to go to Hawaii to work. Thank you very much. You're truly a missionary. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura.
Thank you.
Good job.
Tony, can we have a report on closed session, please?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Norton, members of the City Council. There were two items on this evening's closed session agenda. The first was a conference with real property negotiator. The real property negotiator is the city manager pertaining to the property at 2091 Wharf Road, also known as APN 034-24105. City received a report from and gave direction to its negotiator with regard to that property. There was also a liability claim. The claimant name is Donna Ely, and that item was discussed by the City Council and is on your consent agenda as agenda item 3, or E, excuse me.
Thank you, Tony. Sue, we received any additional materials?
Yes, we did receive 2 additional materials, one for item 9A regarding McGregor Park construction project, and you all have a revised staff report for item 9D regarding the zoning code update and set special meeting schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would respectfully request that the item on, let's see, where is it? The extension for the 411 Beverly Avenue be moved to the end of the agenda, since you and I will have to step down for that.
Okay, we can do that. What item number was that?
I believe it's 9C.
9C. Okay. This is a time for public oral communications. Will any member of the public to address the city council on any item not on the agenda. Presentation will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Individuals will not speak more than once during oral communications. If there's anyone who would like to address the council on any issues not on the agenda, please step forward. Now's your time.
Okay, great, yeah, good. Why don't you do both? No problem.
Good evening. Just wanted to come and give a quick update on the Capitol Skate Park at Monterey Avenue. We're just currently in the EIR process.
You state your name, so
Oh,
it goes
I'm
to
so
the
sorry.
record.
Marie Martorella.
Thank you, Marie.
Just wanted to remind everybody that we're in the middle of the EIR process, and as of this time, we've heard of no known delays in that process, so we are anticipating coming to the Planning Commission in mid to late fall. And just wanted to also throw out there that there's been a lot of confusion, I think, lately in the newspaper. When discussion about McGregor Park comes up, they often refer to it as Capitola Skate Park, and so there's been a lot of, we've been getting some emails saying, you know, which is it, which is going on, where's the issues. So we just wanted to let everybody know that the wording Capitola Skate Park is actually a registered trademark owned by RH Novak. So we just wanted to throw that out there. And maybe in the future when there's newspaper articles and things being discussed, we could delineate the two. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Okay. City Treasurer?
No comment.
Okay. Staff?
Just want to let everybody know that while we love our junior guard program very, very dearly, it is coming to an end this week, so this is the last week of junior guards, and the official start of the second summer here in Capitola after this week.
Thank you, Jamie. Council?
Yes, the first movie on the beach will be on the 28th, and it will be the Lego movie. So come on down, free popcorn, free drinks. Come and see the Lego movie at the beach.
Thank you, Mike. Josh? Stephanie?
Mike, will you tell us about the new artwork that we have in here that's new since our last city
This
council
new
meeting?
artwork comes to us from the gentleman who painted our traffic boxes. Holtman, I'm not sure, I forget the name of the artist. Harmon. And he is an artist that we reached out to. He's done a lot of work for Capitola in the public art sector, so we gave him this opportunity. You can see his work here as well as at the police station.
Great, great. And I'd just like to remind everybody to stock up on rain barrels. Look for them maybe on sale, but there are more stories in the weather about a projected wet winter. So this is a great time to think about buying those rain barrels on sale and getting ready for a wet winter. And I don't know how long we can store the water, but get ready for it. Hopefully we'll have some this year. Maybe we can offer our program again too, our discounted rain barrel program.
Okay. I heard that last week 2 people that are well-known in this community cooked hamburgers and hot dogs. Was that it? Yeah.
400.
Yeah, 400, yeah. So I'd like to recognize that Mike and our chief cooked lots of food for many hungry people out there at the park, JHC Park, and the neighbors next door in the condos were waiting eagerly for it. I've been informed this is the third one in a row, and they all look forward to it, so that tells you that it was well received, and there was a lot of happy kids, and it was really kind of neat. The word sort of spread that the dogs were going to show their stuff, and everyone went up to the wall, the fence, and watched the dogs do their stuff, and it was kind of neat. So it was a great show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Josh. I would like to bring forward for community and council discussion the idea of expanding the no smoking area in the Capitola Village to the whole village. And so I'm hoping to make that a future agenda item for council discussion with council's consent.
Yeah.
Okay. We completed...
Something said, didn't you?
No.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay. We moved the consent calendar, and we have any items that are on the consent calendar can be pulled by the public by just stepping forward and asking that items to be pulled. Or it will be moved to council where they can also pull a consent item, and then if not so, then it'll be approved all in one motion. So is there any items on the consent items that that anyone in the public would like to pull? Being none, we move to council. Is there any items that the council would like to pull?
C and D.
C and D. Okay, we'll take and we'll move those to both of those to the end of the agenda.
Motion to adopt remaining consent calendar.
Second?
Okay, motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to pull item C.
You did.
We just
We
did.
did.
Jeff did.
You did pull C?
got pulled.
Full C and D.
C and D.
Okay, excuse me. Okay. All right, we got C and D.
Yep.
And we will move those in that same order
Double pull it.
to
No,
the
we
end.
triple pulled it.
Okay, all right. Okay. Okay. Okay, we've dealt with the consent agenda. We move to general government, public hearings. Received report regarding the McGregor Park construction project. Steve, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As soon as we get...
It got turned off.
Larry here?
There we go. All right.
Bring your sister to work there?
Our computer system is well-trained as soon as Larry started walking forward.
The item before you tonight is a report on the McGregor Park project, soil contamination issues that have developed, and consideration of some contract amendments. To give you a history on focusing on the soil contamination issues first, there was a series of soil samples taken by the Water District west of the property and included the western boundary of the McGregor property that had detected elevated levels of lead and arsenic. They were rather discrete samples taken at that point, and there was no notice provided that they needed cleaning at that point or needed remediation at that point. And in November 2013, the city considered options for the McGregor property, looking in long range. We looked at hotels, continuing its use as a construction site, or ultimately the council chose to build a multi-use park facility there. In July of 2014, following a series of workshops and plan reviews on the proposed park layout, a contract was awarded to Earthworks Paving to build the park layout, and mainly was the fencing and earthwork involved in it. Did not include actually any of the elements, the bike element, the dog element, or the skate park element. Construction began probably in August, September of 2014, and then in October of 2014, in County Environmental Health notified the city that a complete site assessment would be required, At that point, we ceased construction, and kind of where we are today. Upon receiving the notice, the city retained Weber and Hayes environmental engineers to conduct an assessment, which discovered 2 isolated areas with elevated lead and determined an area site-wide arsenic level of 7.6 milligrams per kilogram. The remediation plan was developed by Weber Hayes that removed the 2 lead hotspots, and it also recommended removing the highest levels of concentration of arsenic, which brought it down, the arsenic levels down on an average to what they believed was an acceptable level. The removal plan for the lead was approved, but the arsenic plan was rejected. Now, for lead, it's strictly a numeric issue. You have so much contamination there, you remove it, you test it, you remove it, and you haul it off-site. With arsenic, it's a little bit different. There isn't a fast numeric threshold that's established. It's based on what is the background of the native soils in that area. So we have a 7.6 milligram per kilogram level throughout the site, and we're talking about the top 2 feet of the site here. If you go off-site where there isn't any fill material, the level is 2.2 milligrams per kilogram. So based on the county's procedures and policies, we're required to mitigate and deal with the overage where we are over 2.2 milligrams per kilogram. So just to refresh everybody, what the site, this is the park plan that was approved by the council. We have a bike park here, which was actually expanded into this area later on. We have the skate park here, and a dog park here, and a parking lot here. Looking at the lead sampling, you can see all these circles are where we took samples throughout the site. There's a little square here and a little square here where it was determined we had elevated lead. This site has actually already been remediated when we started construction of the skate park. The county gave us permission to start that, and we excavated that area and brought in clean fill. This area will still need to be remediated when we do restart work here. Looking at the arsenic levels, there's a couple of options. The option shown here, all these lighter blue areas, are areas that if we excavated these areas, which is approximately, 55% of the park area, we would achieve lowering the average arsenic level below the 2.2 background level. Another option, because removal can be rather expensive, this is about a $90,000 project, would be you can actually cap it, and that's usually what's done. I could talk about the 2 options here. So we can excavate 900 to 1,500 cubic yards of material, and it's a range because what you do is you excavate the 900, and then you test the sidewalls, and if it's still elevated, you keep digging, and we know it will not exceed 1,500 because we have samples at those points. So, and then we replace it with clean fill. We off-haul the excavated material and take it to the landfill. So that's estimated to be $90,000 by Earthworks. This is the price that's in the agenda report. The time we wrote the agenda report, we really didn't have the price and an idea what the capping idea would be, so we do now. We could cap the entire site, and we're talking about every area there where people would walk on with fabric. Everything gets fabric on it, and then either gets 2 feet of clean fill or 2 inches of asphalt or concrete. Earthworks estimated this at $74,000, and what we're looking at is the bike park is pretty simple. It's going to have 2 feet of fill on it already, so we'd remove the soil that's been brought in for the bike park, put the fabric down, and then put 2 feet of soil on top of it until the bike park gets built. The dog park, we're actually recommending 2 inches of asphalt, and I know that might sound a little weird, but the dog park proponents didn't like the rocks that were there as it is. I think we could put in asphalt, and then if we wanted, we can bring in fill on top of that foot of whatever material. They don't like the bark, so I'm not exactly sure. We could create areas with bark, but for right now, the most economical way to treat it would be to pave it with 2 inches of asphalt. Parking lot, we did not have paved in the original project, would be 2 inches of asphalt. I think that's rather straightforward. In the skate park, we'll talk about that in the next slide, but we're recommending concrete. It originally had asphalt. Either way, it would end up being capped. So we've proposed this to the county environmental health, and we're pending approval. We feel confident that this ultimately would be approved. I think this is our recommendation, but as you'll see, my recommendation is to approve funding at this level so that if there's any issues, we're not coming back to the council again. So to talk about the skate park really quick, the original design included several above-ground concrete ramps and other elements. You can see them out there today. They've been built that were supposed to be connected with asphalt paving. Originally, we were going to asphalt pave the whole thing and then just stick some ramps on top of it. It kind of morphed into these concrete ramps. They're now built in. Lots of people have raised concerns about the interface between the concrete and what would be the asphalt. I figure that it would become a maintenance issue quite quickly, and the park designer and builder has recommended that we concrete the entire floor in. And I think staff agrees with them that the long range, that'll give us the most rideable and most enjoyable park and maintenance-free. So the cost of the concrete flooring is $34,600. Cost of paving, the area in the original contract was $14,000, so we're talking a net increase, although they're different contracts, of $20,560. So our recommendations tonight are to approve an amendment for the skate park contract, $34,600 for the concrete floor. Approve an amendment to the park contract with Earthworks for $75,960 for remediation. This is the $90,000 excavation work, less the $14,000 for paving. Authorize myself to continue to investigate the capping remediation option as a cost-saving measure, and then approve a fund transfer of $110,560 within the capital improvement program to cover these costs. So we're recommending that the $110,000 come from a utility undergrounding project. This is money we were given from PG&E several years ago. That project's still at least a year away. We do not know what our local costs will be. So at this point, we can use it for this, and when we know the final cost, we know we're going to have to come up with the money at that point. I think that's the end of my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Michael?
Steve, just for clarity, it's the county that rejected our arsenic remediation plan, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to establish that. The dog park area, would it not be better to do the same thing we're doing with the pump track, which is fabric, 2 feet of fill? And wouldn't that be less than paving?
It would not be less than paving. Because at the dog park, we're not excavating down because we have 2 feet of fabric coming in.
Wait, the dog park, we're not going to excavate.
Yeah.
We're not going to excavate the dog park because we're going to cap it with asphalt.
Right.
But if we take it down 2 feet, we're going to have to dispose of that in a class 5 disposal site or whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So it saves the excavation and hauling of that material off.
Well, there's something, a blacktop dog park just...
some do exist. I envision we create areas, and I know they weren't happy, the dog park proponents weren't happy with the material that was there, which was essentially rock, and they had never chosen that material, but I think we can bring in some various materials. I mean, we have various different areas, some of it sand, some of it bark, some of it dirt, but it'll all be on top of the asphalt, which will allow it to work. I'm looking at the most economical way to get the...
Yeah.
Is that permeable?
No.
Asphalt will not be permeable.
That's the whole idea, is that it's
I know.
not permeable so that you don't transfer the arsenic deeper into the
Right, and that's the object of the fabric, because if you see the fabric, you need to go back in there. You have to actually do an annual inspection to see if any of the fabric has become visible.
I'll be the first one to ask, and this is not an attack. Why didn't we know this when we approved this facility a year and a half ago? It seems like this is something that we should have all known about before we even considered it.
So,
Not that we wouldn't have had this problem if a hotel hadn't been there or whatever, but it's just, and I'm ready to support this 100%, but it did increase, but still.
You know, on other issues we've had with contaminated soil, it's the first time I've run across the whole site needing remediation. And you can see the lead. The lead is not a big issue to go dig out some small areas. You know, the soil reports that were taken, I talked to other people in the county about it, and, you know, they didn't express concern. I told them we're building a park there, and there wasn't a high level of concern raised, unfortunately, until we started building. It was also on the western end where we had nothing planned. I mean, it was at the end of the bike park, actually beyond where the bike park is, that these samples were taken. And, you know, I think I've learned a strong lesson. If we're going to go develop unused property or anything with filling it, we better do some soil sampling besides and have some clearance before we move forward. It's unfortunate, I agree. I just couldn't have ever envisioned having to remediate the whole site. I mean, that's just...
And there's that big a delta between the background and...
Any delta is too big. So if there had been a background of 7.6, which exists in much of the county...
I know. This
wouldn't be an
all over
issue.
the county.
You can't... Yeah, but it's their policy. They consistently have enforced that. Other jurisdictions have run into similar problems. It's kind of where we're at, is we need to remediate the whole thing.
Did anybody else ever use this property for a laydown area besides our projects, our city projects?
Well, we rented it out to other jurisdictions, and, you know, the sanitation district used it for quite a while. Soquel Creek has used it for quite a while.
Anybody else contribute to the contamination that we can reach
It's
out?
hard to say where the arsenic, most likely the arsenic came with the original fill that was brought in, which we estimate came from the Highway 1 construction.
Caltrans.
Trying to go after Caltrans, yeah. It's been...
Okay, I got it.
Ed? Hey, back to the asphalt. I'm concerned how we're going to be able to put the asphalt down based on the permeable surfaces we had to put down in Lower Pack Cove. How are we being allowed?
So we're going to be directing that runoff. It doesn't directly discharge, so we're going to direct as much of it as we can, and there is a bioswale already on site. We're going to kind of grade it toward that. The rest of the areas we're going to have to fashion in some kind of percolation that will work with the contractor to build as we're going forward.
And because it's asphalt, it's not going to drain. So if we bring in fill and put it on top of there, which could be likely for the dog park, just specifically the dog park, there's no plan to drain that because it can only go down the foot or so.
And then it'll drain off the sides, yes.
What about the walkways and the pathways on this, too?
There's a 1 DG pathway, and that'll get paved, too.
That'll get paved, too. So the walkways through the dog park all the way to the edge of the concrete where the skate park is to the BMX park will be, that whole area will be actually under asphalt?
Correct.
We just see.
Okay. So in reality, on the changeover from asphalt to concrete on the skate park, really, we're really talking $20,000 difference in the contract.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds more when we say 34 minus 12. I think it's $20,000.
$20,000.
And so the cost for the remediation for the rest of the property was in a bid form, or was that something we're just estimating what the cost is at this point?
No, those are proposals I got from the Earthworks contractor.
And what was that total again?
So that was $90,000.
$90,000. So that's going to be a set price? I mean, we're pretty going to be pretty...
Except we're still, we also have the price to do the paving remediation instead of the excavation, so that'd be the 74. I'm asking for the 90 tonight so that I can move forward, but we are going to work with them and try and do the capping rather than the excavation and offal.
So the alternative to the asphalt area in the dog park and our pathways is to actually do 2 feet of capping, is that correct?
Correct.
Bring in 2 feet of capping. And what is the cost difference for that?
So to remove the material, excavate the material.
We don't. What if we didn't excavate? What if we just went over the top? We just capped.
It's high concentration arsenic.
You
gotta take the arsenic out.
Yeah.
You're talking about fabric and then 2 additional
Fabric,
feet?
yeah, then 2 feet
Yeah.
of fill.
Raise the whole site up a couple feet?
We haven't priced that. We had it excavation trying to keep the grades similar. I mean, we would have a 2-foot higher, in the bike park, that's not an issue, but the dog park, that would be how exactly we would maintain the 2 feet of fill over the existing grade.
I think the paths are the only thing that would be an issue there. You can
Right.
certainly raise the dog park and the pump track 2 feet without taking any soil away and do it, but the paths you couldn't because you have to get to the features off the path.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so,
But they're getting paved, so
yeah. I'm trying to picture this. It seems like an awful lot of asphalt areas. And we do have 2 fences in between. We have a fenced skateboard park, then we have a fenced dog park. And so that whole area plus the walkways up to the BMX park, is that where the break comes? That we go back to dirt?
Go back to the map here. So yeah, here's the pathway that'll go into the bike park, and the skate park entrance is actually right here. So this pathway,
What about the kids' play area?
that's actually a later design than the drawing showed, was taken up into the bike park. So this is all now bike park in this area.
That is bike park, okay. And
Can you go back to the earlier one that showed the contamination? Because on the left side of the...
The lead or the arsenic? This is
the
lead.
arsenic,
This is arsenic.
Yeah. So on the right side of the dog park, is that...
Right here?
then-
This is parking lot.
That's parking, but the area that's not enclosed by blue, isn't that...
No, to the left.
A little bit to the, yeah. that-
Right here?
Is that non-contaminated?
No, it has,
Because you don't have it enclosed by blue, so I was just wondering.
it doesn't need to be excavated. The area that they identified in blue is what would need to be excavated to lower the average sampling
Yeah,
of the
you-
site
you
to
wanna
less
get the
than down to
average low.
2.2,
Okay.
yeah.
So
yeah.
the part on the right that's not enclosed in blue, does that have to be asphalted?
Yes, because it is above background. It's currently at
It's above
3.5, 3, 2.5, 4.2.
so if we excavated 2 feet, we would be out of contaminated, so we know that?
No, we don't know that, but 2 feet of clean fill is all that's required, so we'd excavate 2 feet, put back fabric,
We
and
put
then
it back in.
and then
Okay.
bring in clean fill.
And so how cooperative is the county going to be with us in this thing? Are we going to have to go through this ritual again with them, this game with back and forth? You know, if we're going to do this thing, we
No,
want
I
a
think,
clear
these-
path and
you know,
agreement here, Steve, that they're
there's,
going to go along with us.
the 2 feet is a standard, it's not something we need to, you know, we need to, as we build this, if we're excavating, we're going to have to sample until we get clean samples. That's why capping it, is just capping it, we don't have to do any more sampling.
Okay. Is there any more questions, this town?
Yeah.
So I did talk with environmental. I have a pretty good idea of this story going all the way back to the water district and the problems that they first uncovered. So I understand the issue that we need to present to the public a park that does not have any potential of contamination for the kids that are going to be there, for the parents that are going to bring their kids, and any other use of that park. So I completely understand that. What kind of wiggle room does the county have? Are they going to be imposing other conditions on us? Has this been reviewed with them already, this proposal?
Yes, it has.
Okay. So what kind of direction did they give you? Did they just say it fit into their general requirements, or did they actually dive down into the numbers and stuff?
They reviewed a report provided by our environmental engineer that detailed this report, and they have approved it. And then we came back to them with the capping idea, because we thought that would save us some money, and they've given us a tentative approval on that. We don't have final approval on that yet, though.
Okay. Okay. So I do understand, you know, I say this to the public and to the members of the board here. We're making a park for our community to use. And so it actually has to be as contamination-free as possible. And I don't know if this is the right way to look at it, but in one sense, if we had done our homework initially, we would have found out about this arsenic, and we probably would be in the same place we are right now, but at an earlier time. So I think Capitola is committed to providing a skate park for its kids. We lost Postman, or was it Post Office? Yeah, we lost Post Office. This will be a great place, not as big, obviously, and for many years now we've been committed to trying to find something for the dog owners of this community. I don't understand why they like asphalt, but, you know, if that works, I think this is great. Thank you.
You know, the railroad corridor had the same problem with lead and arsenic. They went through and they held up the process for a while. But the county did allow them to go through, and they had high levels along there, but it wasn't any different than the soils test otherwise. Our problem here is that the surrounding soils have lower levels that make it impossible for us to do it.
And it changes
Yeah,
all
so
over the county.
is there danger at this park? I would say there's no danger really at all with the soils there. It's not an issue of being dangerous to the public. It's a standard that's set because of different levels of arsenic. Arsenic is natural in all soils.
Right.
And it depends on the amount. And so just because it has it on the outside, we're required to bring it down that level. But there's not a danger with usage of that property at this time.
Right. In my conversations with the county, they're just not going to agree to something that has the perception that there's a danger. And, you know, we want to provide a park that has no perception of danger, that is best that we can do it under the circumstances.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open this to public. Anyone like to address the council on this issue, please step forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. My name is Richard Lippy. I live at 620 Monterey Avenue, and I'm also here representing POP, which is Protecting Our Public Parks. I'll be brief. I just want to thank and sincerely say that I can appreciate all the work that staff is doing to move forward on McGregor Park. There are several elements there. A lot of us have just talked about the skate park, but all 5 elements, I think, are going to be a wonderful addition to the city, and I sincerely thank all the effort and time that's gone into this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
My name is Helen Bryce. Mayor Norton, council members, and city staff, I just wanted to express my appreciation for the efforts of the city staff in exploring the solutions to the construction delays at McGregor Park. And we're very pleased to hear that the economical solutions that the staff has proposed. We're happy to see that concrete is being considered for the skate park element at McGregor Park. Our friends who skate really like that idea. We really strongly support the city's completion of McGregor Park, which will be a wonderful multi-use park that families and individuals of all ages can enjoy for years or hopefully decades to come. So we'd like to thank you, the City Council, in advance for approving the contract changes that will allow the park's construction to move forward. We feel this park will be a great place for children and dogs and seniors and young adults alike. And I'm looking forward to the opening and the ribbon cutting ceremony that we'll hopefully have soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on this issue? Okay, return to council.
I will move the staff recommendation. Again, we understand that we can't foresee everything. I'm sure you found the most economical way to do it. Everyone thinks they have a better idea, but at the end of the day, there's only one, rational path. So that's it. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Before we vote, I have some comments I'd like to make. This concept of Monterey Park has grown over the past year, and I just want to clarify some issues here and make a statement. I never wanted a skate park at McGregor Park, and I think that's clear to everyone that knows that, and I voted no on the proposal all the way. My goal was to have a skate park that was going to be central to the citizens of Capitola. The original plan that we approved was that was approved by this council, I voted against that also, was an asphalt surface that was going to have ramps on it. And this is much like the surface that is in Watsonville right now that is called Ramsey Park. And what they're doing right now in Ramsey Park is they just tore it out because it doesn't work. And they're building a $783,000 skate park, 12,000 square feet. And when this plan was approved to put in asphalt and ramps, I made a statement that that is not a real skate park. And I still hold to that statement, that a asphalt surface with ramps and features is not a skate park. As this progressed, Monty Foundation donated $50,000 for concrete features. This council voted another $50,000 to match that. At the same time, or shortly after that, we discussed a concept for a real skate park at Monterey Park. What's happened now is, with the $100,000 of concrete features, I have to say now that I can no longer say that McGregor Park is not a skate park. And with the inclusion of this concrete surface on it, McGregor Park will actually become, by all definitions, a skate park. It doesn't help the fact that the contractors that were out there working on the job added extra features at no cost. If you look at the original plan of what the features were on that park and what has been built out there, the truth of the matter is it is actually developing into a quality skate park. Which brings us to the dilemma that we have now is, now we're going to put another $20,000 into it. I'm not going to blame the arsenic on the skate park, but what has happened now is this park has taken more of the city money, which the concept of the city was they were looking for someone to build a skate park at no cost to the city. And now this system, this McGregor Park has morphed into what's going to be a skate park. It's going to be a decent skate park. And we're going to be confronted with looking at building 2 skate parks in a town of 10,000 people. And I have to ask myself a question, is there some point where we adopt some kind of fiscal responsibility? And I don't have an answer to that. I mean, this is going to come down to input from the citizens of this town, but there were certain things that drove me to say and be in favor of projects. And the fact of the matter is whatever is morphed out of McGregor Park, it is now, and I have to say this, and that's the point I just want to make sure I cleared up at this meeting, as this vote takes place, with the concrete basin being poured on this park, and all that's been done there, it will be a respectable and totally usable skate park. And I just want to make that clear.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Stephanie, you want? Okay.
I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
I'd like to just add a couple things on this thing. I think it's important with us moving forward on this project, and it sounds like we have unanimous consent of this council on this, is that we really need to work and do some investments towards safe passage between at least the middle school area and Park Avenue over to this property. And we have an obligation to do that, and I think that we will do that. Okay. The other part is I have a real problem with this asphalt coverage of this much land. I had a problem with the parking lot, and I fought that on our lower Pacific Cove, and we got permeable material there. All of a sudden, we're forced, contrary to what is good practices environmentally, we're pushed to have non-porous materials over probably 50% of this property, if not 80% now, if you include the skateboard park. And so I wish there were alternatives, Steve, that we could look at to this thing, and maybe if we're, and at the same time, I don't want to do anything to hold this up. We need a completion of this park as quickly as possible, and the most expedient manner and the most economical means that we can do that. We're going to allocate the money here, it appears, is that I will speak for this council and this community that we expect this park to be completed within a couple months, 2 months. Let's get it done. Let's get the contractor out there. Let's don't let the county stand in our way anymore. Let's get this thing done and get this park open as a community use. And so we're entertaining a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I have a request of Public Works, if anything changes with regard to the surface of this park, that it comes back to us. Anything. Even if we think it's making it better.
Okay.
I don't want to turn around at the grand opening and see something that this council, and we've seen this before, this council did not expect.
Is the parking lot permeable?
No, it's going to be paved.
It's not paved.
It is.
It will be
supposed
paved
to be
now.
rock originally, and it's now recommended, well, it's going to be paved. we need to cap
Let's
it.
bear in mind that while we're required to keep stormwater on site, the notion of permeable paving to recharge the aquifer is a fallacy. This close to the coast, anything that goes into the ground goes out to the ocean. So, let's embrace that.
Okay, so we authorized, Steve, the money that you needed to move forward on those items. Thank you very much.
I just have one question, though. Steve, you alluded to the fact that we're taking this out of the undergrounding, and I remember the city did undergrounding on Monterey, if I'm not mistaken, and PG&E rejected it because we didn't do it the right way. So I don't know what's happening with this other undergrounding segment, but I'm looking forward to that plan, too. Thanks.
And
So-
through attrition, Steve, that we'll see sand go over the top of this AC? Is that right?
Likely, yes.
Okay, right. Okay, that made me happy, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, we move to item B.
I was informed about that some years ago.
Receive reporting regarding the fiscal year 2015-16 capital improvement program. Steve, you're up again, thank you.
Still up.
So this is, by necessity, going to be rather long and detailed report on each of the projects within our capital improvement program that are funded in the 2015-16 program. So I'm just going to go down the projects. I think it'd probably be best to have questions on a specific project. Ask it as we're going through it so that we don't forget our questions and have to go back 20 projects, back to the beginning. So we'll start with projects that have been on the books for some time. Claire's Wharf is probably, traffic calming is probably the oldest. As kind of a short history, it was thought of as part of the Brisbane Hotel project. It was supposed to be built as part of the Brisbane Hotel project, with them providing a significant amount of the funding. As that project failed, the funding with it went, then we were able to get some other local funding through the Regional Transportation Commission. And that's kind of where we are today. Unfortunately, a sanitation project is coming, was supposed to be being built right now, but it was delayed. It's going to be built in spring. That is going to tear up half of Clare Street, so we've again held off building it until that is complete. A concept design, which is what the drawings show here, is very schematic, I realize, and hard to read. I really don't have all the details on the project. I'm kind of giving you the highlights. It was approved in 2006, actually by the redevelopment agency at that time. Harrison Associates was the designer. Like I said, it's on hold due to the sanitation project, which is currently going to happen in spring, so I anticipate this happening in fall of 2016. And at this point, it's fully funded. Unless construction prices continue in their current trend, we may be coming back for additional money. So it involves an overlay of the entire Clare Street from 41st Avenue to Wharf Road, and the installation of islands and narrowing the road and making sure it's not a straight road where you have long sight lines, which is how you slow people down. It does include crossings at both 42nd and 46th Avenue, which don't exist today.
I do have a question. So as you approach 41st, there's that dip, and then you come up.
Yes.
I don't know if this sort of interacts with this plan.
We're looking at changes to the intersection, the way the lanes work, but not changing the topography, because that ties into, was it Derby Avenue is in the bottom of that dip, and then there's driveways everywhere, so to kind of take that out would become difficult. We do hope just to slow people down. Essentially from Derby, or actually 42nd Avenue, to 41st Avenue, we're not going to change the lanes. There's so much traffic in that area in both directions that to reduce the lanes that are there and try and slow them down is only going to cause more congestion. Our traffic calming is really between 42nd and Wharf Road.
Got it. How about the right turn onto 41st off of Claire's? Is that going to be changed? Right now you can't do the turn unless
there's no right on red there.
Yeah.
We could review it as part of this. That was implemented a couple of years ago as a safety measure. I'd have to get the police chief to give us a report, but I know we've significantly reduced the intersections at 41st and Clares by the changes we made there. So I'm not anticipating changing that right on red at this point.
That was a pretty strong recommendation by the chief.
However,
I'd be reluctant to.
However, we might want to look at, asking for the chief to look at a recommendation to change it in the evening hours, maybe 8 p.m.
Only if our goal up here is to confuse the public more.
I know,
then I'd probably go along with that.
I know, I've thought about that
And we could do
before.
alternate side of the street parking too, because I
know.
loved that in New York. It was the best.
I know. I've thought about that. We don't do it anywhere else, so it's probably not a very good idea, but people have expressed that to me. It's not a problem at night, late at night, it's not a problem at all. So I don't know how but if there's any way to get around that, maybe not. Maybe we can't change that rule. Yeah.
Question, Steve? I know the sewer district was having trouble getting a bid for somebody to do that work. Have they been successful in finding someone to bid that project?
So they received one bid that was approximately twice what had estimated and budgeted. At this point, I know they've applied to the state for additional funding to assist them with the project, and then they'll rebid it. I don't know if they are doing any value engineering on the project to try and reduce the cost. There's not a whole lot they can do. They're drilling a pipeline 40 feet under Soquel Creek up to the road there, so there's not a lot of options in that line. So they're trying to find more funding, and then they'll rebid it, and hopefully they'll...
Right. I think the reality here is that we're contingent upon them securing that job. And the reality of it is that job is going to struggle, is what it appears. So I just don't want to be too optimistic about this job. I know I don't want to move forward and have it torn up, but in reality...
I would say that's my biggest fear, is we finish a project and put paving down, and 2 months later somebody's tearing it up again.
I'm not advocating that. I just think it's good that the public is...
They are actively working on it. It's an important project to them. I know they have, they're very dedicated to getting it done.
Right.
And I'll be honest, I haven't checked with them in the last 6 weeks on what the status is, but I'd happy to do that.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Go ahead.
38th Avenue paving, it's currently out to bid. It's paving from Capitola Road to Bromer, a little past Bromer to the city limit, actually. It did include some sidewalk project, but due to some right-of-way, we're kind of pulling that sidewalk project out so we can get the paving done. And we'll be in construction this fall, and it is fully funded.
Is the sidewalk on our side or the county side?
The sidewalk all 38 there is it's on the west side.
So it's our project?
It's our sidewalk, yeah.
Okay.
Is the county planning any work at all?
In the lower part of 38th? Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
They had done some work earlier and had asked us to put the sidewalk on, if we would include the sidewalk on.
They did a project just past the city limits.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the little residential street there that's just beyond Bromer. And they asked us to participate, as their redevelopment agency did a project there, and we did contribute to build some sidewalk down at that end.
Yeah.
I can't see the detail, but is there a bike lane?
There will be bike lanes on both sides.
Both sides?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Park Avenue sidewalk, so this is about 90% design. This is from Monterey Avenue up. We've run into more utility problems with some water mains that ended up being in the way, and some tree conflicts that we're trying to work out. I just received a kind of a plat of each property showing where the sidewalk's going to go in relation to their existing improvements. I will be sending those out to residents in September, and getting their feedback on the project as it affects their properties. Once we have the final design, we do need to go back to the RTC and request funding. I anticipate that in October, and then we would build and construct over winter weather depending.
I'm confused, Steve. I thought that was on the residential side of the street. It's not on the route corridor side, is it?
No, but we have RTC funding, TDA funding in the project, yeah. And we need to go and have it reviewed. TDA funding needs to be reviewed by the Elderly and Disabled Task Force before it can get released.
Do we have a process when we have the engineering complete that we can go out to the public with that?
Yeah.
We do,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. We'll make everything available. I was going to send everybody their plans and get their input directly that way.
Okay.
If we feel like we should have a workshop, we could certainly do that, but I think it's on a property-by-property basis as we go through this, so.
I remember in public discussion, they were asking us to
Right.
do that, so I think we should.
Yeah,
We'll definitely do a reach out to them.
Yeah, when I was campaigning on that road, a lot of people would like a public meeting on that.
Right. I know we've got a lot of comments. People are anxious to see this built.
Right.
And, you know, I haven't heard anybody say they didn't want to see it in front of their property, so I think it's all positive at this point.
We're going to hear some, because I have talked to some, and it's one of those cases, I think I said before, where you do something years later and half the people forgot about it, or half the people are new,
Right.
and so they don't know about it. So we are going to get some pushback, because when I walked that area, there was
Okay.
some pushback. Then we have to just keep reminding them that it's a really, really good project.
So,
And most said August, so it said public workshop in August, so it's a
it's
full
been
workshop
pushed
in
back to
August.
September at this
Yeah.
point. as I'm
This is a
trying-
major step in our
City improvements.
public access.
Right.
School access there, because the kids use that street.
I will say, as we were designing it, we didn't push the sidewalk out to the property lines, and we tried to keep the existing lanes that were there and meld it with the existing street, rather than, there's a distance between where that street ends today and where the property lines are, and typically you would build the sidewalk out at the end. But that would have had a great impact on a lot of the housing there. We pulled it back to where the existing street is, so to try and minimize those impacts on all the property owners there.
I hate to have you work on a Saturday, but I think it'd be a great step to have a public workshop on a Saturday
Okay.
morning, 10 to 12,
We could do
10
that.
to 11:30. I know everybody's just interested in their own parcel, but that would give them a chance, you know, the city's having a workshop, we can come down, we can talk to them, and, you know, maybe 3 people show up, but it's still worth it to do it, to provide
Okay.
that option to
I'd
people.
be happy to do that. We have several workshops scheduling here in September, so.
You said you pushed the sidewalks back. Did that compromise the bike lanes on either side, or are they still?
No, it kept the bike lanes there. It was
Okay.
just, yeah, the lanes of traffic, full bike lane, and then the sidewalk, rather than
Great.
Good. Thank you.
Stockton Avenue pedestrian improvements. Again, this is one we bid actually in the fall, didn't receive any bids, and we'll be going out to bid again next week or two, and construction as soon as the festivals are over. I think you know the project pretty well. It's sidewalk improvements at Stockton Esplanade, reducing the crosswalks down to a single crosswalk. One change we made in here was this was going to be a raised island. I know there was a lot of concerns about that. At this point, we're recommending a painted island so that emergency vehicles and traffic can drive over the top of it.
Good.
Great.
And
So
based on the current estimate, it's fully funded. I probably give a whole disclaimer here that construction pricing is going up. There's lots of projects and lots of money out there, and we're seeing it, and you'll see it in a minute when I talk about a paving project I recently got some pricing on. So I'm hoping that it's fully funded. Based on our current estimates, it is.
This is a high priority in the community.
Right.
So BIA's looked at this?
We had a series of hearings prior, when we bid last summer, when we were first looking at this. The BIA was invited to this. Have they looked at it in the last 6 months? Probably not.
Okay.
Hill Street and pedestrian improvements. I apologize, this graphic is not the best, but those of you who've traveled on Hill Street are aware that it's a narrow road with parking on both sides, and there's no pedestrian facilities, sidewalks, bike lanes, or anything. So people are walking the roadway, cars need to pull over to let others pass. So what we're recommending there is we actually remove the parking on one side. We've had petitions of people that support that idea. I think will be supported by the neighbors. We will be hosting a neighborhood workshop in September for that. And then it also includes filling the one gap in sidewalk we have on Capitola Avenue by Pine Street. So we're looking at a bike lane on Hill Street. It'll be striped as a bike lane. I anticipate people will be walking in it. There just isn't room to get a sidewalk and a bike lane in there. So we're recommending we start with the bike lane, fix the sidewalk on Capitola Avenue. Like I said, we will be holding a neighborhood meeting on this in September. Construction should be pretty quick. The striping certainly can happen quickly. The sidewalk, we'll have to see what the pricing we get on that is. Based on the current estimates, when we first put this out, we didn't anticipate a lot of the retaining walls that are going to be involved in the sidewalk project, so we're at 75% funding. I'm not recommending any changes at this point. We'll see what the pricing is when we get there and make adjustments at that point. Rosedale area, this is the project I was referring to when we talked about bids. So this was to be done in conjunction with the sanitary sewer project that's going on right now. The plans are complete. We gave it to the contractor who's working for the county, asked him to give us a price. His bids were 58% over the estimate, which is over $100,000, $140,000 more than we had and we don't even have the 190 budgeted. We're more like the 150 level and the 300. I've talked to the county; they're willing to help, but not to that level. So at this point, I've talked to the contractor. We kind of revised the scope of work rather than full pavement replacement and reconstruction in similar areas to do a thick overlay. And the county has indicated their willingness to help us support it. So as that project wraps up, we will have newly paved streets in Rosedale, the 3 cul-de-sacs that go off Rosedale, and also Bay Avenue, where we currently see the temporary trenching going in there. I anticipate it being done as part as they wrap up their project. Usually the paving's at the end. Right now, that would be this fall, is that they're hoping to be wrapped up and gone by December.
By December?
By December, yeah.
But I thought the project wasn't going to be finished till spring now.
Well, I talked to the construction manager with HDR, and he said they're
That's great.
They're thinking, maybe he's telling me one thing and the county another, but he told me they were hoping to be wrapped up by December. I think the paving will be done by then, if they have some, check items and things like that drag on. But I know they're working like crazy, and they've been actually doing a great job meeting schedule so far.
That's great, because we were trying to expedite their work on the county side through the mobile home park there, because if they can get the hours extended there so they can work a little longer there, they can get the whole project done faster. There have been some complaints about noise on that end. And so we talked to Supervisor Leopold about trying to expedite it. I don't know whether it would be starting earlier or working late, because then they could get through our mobile home park faster. And if they can get through our mobile home park like a month faster, then they can get this work done faster too. Just because people on our side have been through it for now a year and a half at Brookfield Terrace Mobile Home Park. They've been under construction, and so if they can cut a month off that, they would really be delighted. So we're kind of working on that end to see if we can get it expedited, so I'm not sure.
And we've been trying to help them. I mean, obviously, we gave them a big chunk of our corporation yard to facilitate the project, and, I've authorized several days of weekend work up at our yard so they could be trying to get this project to. I mean, they came up with a great idea. They were supposed to have also torn up Monterey from Bay up to the middle school as part of this project, and they came up with an alternative to bore under what's Noble Gulch Park, and they've completed that. You can, except for the hole at Bay Avenue, you can hardly tell they were there. So they've done a good job trying to minimize.
Describe the work through the corporation yard.
So the corporation yard, I don't know if anybody made it up there. They had a 40-foot deep drilling hole there, and had it shored, and then they had cranes would lower the drilling equipment into, but you stood up there, 40-foot deep holes, awfully deep.
The front page of our sanitation district annual CIP report has a project looking down at the Rosedale project, down a couple of stories down there at what it really looks like. It's amazing.
Yeah. So that's all backfilled, and I heard the cone's going on tomorrow.
We'll have a copy of the CIP in the office for you if you want to take a look at it. The pictures are incredible. You can't describe these projects. You have to look at them. They're incredibly complicated, incredibly expensive, and just amazing that they can do this kind of work in such constrained spaces where you have the courtyard and you have the gully there and you have all that vegetation, and they're going to drill down and drill right across. I mean, that's amazing, amazing technology.
So I would, the contractor's done a good job, and I'm confident we can get a paving project through them. I was kind of disappointed in their bid here, but I think that's reflective of what we're seeing in construction pricing right now.
They can get.
Yeah, and we'll work it out with the county. Monterey Avenue, it should say, and Park Avenue Trail. So this is a trail that will run from the upper Beach and Village parking lot up to the rail corridor and then over to the property at Monterey and Park that they use for a stop when they had a train go through, the fun train going through. We're building it to the requirements of the Monterey the Sanctuary Scenic Trail, so that it'll meet all those guidelines, and we'll link into that as we move forward with rail trail projects in the city. I think this is really can be seen as the first part of that, because it's going to tie our parking lot, our 230-odd parking spaces in the upper lot, to that rail trail, and it's going to provide a place for people to access the trail from there. So we've got the conceptual plan done. We now need to get that approved by the RTC and ultimately by the railroad operator. I do not believe it needs to go to the PUC, which, so like a railroad crossing, would have to be approved by the PUC, but I think we can get these approved by the operator and the RTC. I'm hoping we can get all that done and construct in the spring of next year, and it does appear to be fully funded. So we'll have a pathway that runs from, here's the nose of the parking lot where it turns and goes into the bigger parking lot, a path that will run kind of parallel to the sidewalk so people can access it from these cars, and then a gradual ramp meets ADA requirements up to the rail corridor, and then rail corridor along the pump, along the area here, and then it'll tie back into the intersection at Monterey and Bay. The requirements are the pathway has to be 12 feet from the center of the rail, and there will be a 6-foot fence that runs along here to prevent people from accessing the tracks themselves. So Kimley Horn's working on this. We anticipate trying to set up a meeting with the RTC in the next 2 weeks to review the plan, get their go-ahead, and then we'll probably go to final design so we can submit to the railroad.
Is this a project we can go for outside funding on?
We've got, the RTC gave us, I believe it's $250,000. Yeah, as part of their rail trail project.
Does that include with the park area too?
Yes, yeah. Okay. So the park area is mainly going to be a bus turnout and then some landscaping. That's really because the RTC has longer range plans for it, and it will have an area for the rail trail to proceed through there.
Fantastic.
So if any construction was done in the top lot there, would the start of this run into that?
I'm sorry.
Any construction on the top area? I mean, this is sufficiently away from the current parking. You said the bulb, and I was trying. Is that where there's a site for some pay stations? Is that?
There used to be a pay station there. We moved it away from there.
Okay,
so it's right at the corner there. Yeah, and it shouldn't be impacted by if we build a structure there or something there. We may have to modify just the end of it, but the rest of the trail, I haven't seen any plans that talk about changing that roadway as it comes in.
Okay.
Probably the largest project on our CIP right now is a roundabout at Capitol Ave and Bay Avenue. This is the current concept plan that we have. This has been completed. I'm working with the consultant right now, trying to schedule the workshop so that he's got enough information. We'll hold that workshop in September. Big part of this project is going to be undergrounding the utilities, which needs to occur first. If you go out there, right at this corner at Bay and Cap Ave by the bank, there's a utility pole with must be 50 different wires hanging on it. We need to underground all that. So that's where our undergrounding utility project is going to be, is going to go back, start here to pull here, and then we're going to continue all the way down Bay Avenue. That's actually the next project. So we currently have $159,000 allocated to this project. A lot of that has gone toward the design work and the environmental work that's been done. Current estimates, although I think this is high, is a $900,000 project. So as we get through the utility undergrounding and move forward with this, we will certainly be looking for other grant sources. The Monterey Unified Air Pollution Control District Air Board grants. We actually reviewed this project with them this year. They love the project. They love roundabouts. They love funding roundabouts. But due to our scheduling and trying to get the utilities undergrounded, they recommended that we apply next year. So we'll be applying next year. I don't think they're going to give us the remaining $800,000 we need, but it'll give us a big chunk, and then we'll continue to seek sources for the rest of it.
Where's this at in the design process right now, Steve?
So the concept design, I'd say this is a 30% design right now. We want to hold the workshop based on this design, make sure we have community support, and also get the utility, PG&E, working on the undergrounding aspect of it.
What's the diameter of the internal island?
I don't know. It might still be about 40 feet.
38.
So the roadway has a 110-foot diameter. That's not the internal, that's the center of the roadway.
I mean, the outside diameter is...
So the outside diameter here is probably around 75 feet, I believe.
It's not for a WB-50 vehicle.
Bigger than I thought.
Yeah. So what trucks that circulate here, a couple of the things here. This turn from here, this hard right, more than 90 degrees, difficult today for the large vehicles, buses, garbage trucks, any kind of semi. They're going to be better off going around, and the diameter is such that this will be a much easier turn for them, and then they would go that way. This is going to have a mountable curb. The mayor sent us a link to one that was done in Coronado, and Kimley Horn's actually gotten those plans from them already and are taking that in. That one's a little different. It probably has about 10% of the traffic volume that this one does, but from a design concept, it's very similar. It's a skewed intersection. So that's going to be the most difficult turn in this project, is going to be this right. All the rest of them are going to feel pretty normal if you've driven a roundabout, which seems they're becoming more and more commonplace. It should be good. The pedestrian access, I think, will be much shorter off to the edges than the long wait we have as people cross now.
What's this going to do? Well, I'll wait till the meetings.
Even if you cut off part of the corner there in front of the store, that wouldn't be enough to get the trucks around the corner there.
No, it's more of the angles than anything else. Cause
you'd have to take too much of it off, probably.
Yeah, but... So the utility undergrounding, certainly the same location. So just originally what was improved several years ago by the council was an undergrounding project, Bay Avenue all the way down Bay and down Monterey, and then also down Capitola Ave. We don't have sufficient Rule 20A money to do that entire project, and that's one of the reasons PG&E hasn't started working on it. I'm going to focus them on starting here and going down Bay as far as we can go until the money runs out. I think that's our goal. We may get to the end of Monterey, so we'd have undergrounded utilities, but just this intersection is about half of our Rule 20A allocation, just because the volume and number of poles and wires and vaults that are going to be required in this area. So I don't know if we're going to get halfway down Bay Avenue or all the way down Bay Avenue as we go through this, but we're going to focus on undergrounding it so we can get this project built. Just PG&E, these are PG&E controlled projects. We have funding, we get a certain allocation every year called Rule 20A money. We have about $1.7 million in there. PG&E controls it. It goes to pay their expenses for the design work and construction. So it's all, but we tell them where we want to do the work, so that's what we've been waiting. Following the workshop, we'll really start pressing PG&E to start the utility undergrounding project. And this is what we borrowed money from in the last item to pay for McGregor, just so we're aware. Park Avenue paving.
Just a question. So that money's from a certain allocation, Rule 28, you said. So it's not a fund that we can't use for anything else. We could
So, okay, so there's the Rule 20A money is money we don't budget. We just have an allocation of PG&E and Form Design. You don't see it anywhere in our budgets. The money we took today, we borrowed for McGregor, it's actually money we had sold an easement to PG&E for their pipeline through Rispin.
Got it.
And the money was earmarked at that time to help pay for any local costs for the undergrounding project.
Got it.
If we don't know what our local costs are going to be, as we get there, we'll know what our local costs. What they won't pay for is like easement acquisition and private utility reconnection. So there will be some local costs that we'll have to come up with. But the $1.7 million, that's not part of what we took at all today.
Okay.
Park Avenue paving, and this also includes trying to improve the bike lanes through the Eucalyptus Grove prior to Kennedy. This is in design. We're at about 50% design right now. Nichols Consulting is doing the work. They've completed the survey work. We hope at this point to go to bid in November, although looking at the weather forecast, I'm not sure we can build this in the winter, but we'll have bids ready and build it as weather permits this fall. And at this point, it is fully funded. Monterey Avenue paving and the next project have been lumped together. They're actually scheduled for construction next spring. They are in design right now. They're not as far along as Park Avenue because we're trying to build Park Avenue this year. Monterey and the next project will be built next spring. So this is Monterey from Washburn, and it includes Kennedy up to Park Avenue. This is the area where, based on council direction, we're looking at adding a dedicated bike lane. And I will be returning to the council either September or October, last meeting in September or October, waiting to get some more traffic counts right now, to talk about the impacts of putting that bike lane in. It involves removing quite a bit of parking from one side of the road, and we'll have a public hearing and notice it and have that discussion whether we want to proceed with that. It's not at this point affecting the design work we're doing. That's all pavement design. It will affect the striping plans as we go through. So we'll present the bike lane options to the council. If we want to hold a workshop, it'd probably also be in October with all the residents along Monterey. We'll complete the plans in January, and then construction next spring. Included in that project, this will go out as one bid, is paving for 42nd Diamond and Ruby. They're in pretty desperate need of getting pavement. It's getting designed along the same way. We will bid it and construct it so we get better pricing with the Monterey Avenue project. There's no real issues here. We're just going to take out and rebuild what's there and hopefully build it next spring. And again, this is fully funded based on my current estimates. Rispin Park, you've certainly heard enough about that recently. The concept plan has been approved by the council. We are going through the CEQA and permitting right now. We anticipate going to the Planning Commission, I believe, in the October meeting to get the use permits that are required and coastal development permits, and also to certify the CEQA documents at that time. Based on that approval, construction plans will be prepared by December. We'd bid it in January. We can't actually do any grading work there based on the environmental review until April 15th, so that is our target date to begin construction. And this one, concerning funding, we're really close. The current estimate has us about $50,000 short. But by the time we get there and we've gone through CEQA and analyzed all the alternatives, we may be there or we may be a little bit short, but we're very close to fully funded on this project.
How are we doing on the issues with the wall and the National Register and all that sort of stuff?
We have good news on that. We've met with the concerned citizen regarding the wall and the amphitheater location. Indication we've gotten is that their concerns about the wall no longer exist. So
Wow.
And that the amphitheater, we've given them proposals. Basically, we can design it out of the conservation easement there. It's not quite as elegant a design, but we can do it. But we've made a offer to them to try and clean up what the conservation easements are in exchange for letting us go back into the conservation easement. We met end of the week before, I believe, and we're waiting for them to get back to us. But we are proceeding with CEQA. CEQA will have two options, one's with the amphitheater and the conservation easement, one without, and then we'll have a final project decision as we move forward.
Great, thanks. Did you get a sense of the redesign in terms of seating?
I think went from about 50 down to about 35. And it'll have an appearance more of a bleacher, and it will be built back into a hillside. But we'll do our, Mike Arnone, the landscape architect on this, is really good, and I think he can make it fit in and look good, whichever one we want to go with.
Okay.
Tennis court reconstruction. So we have, I believe, $40,000 from Monty Foundation, another $50,000 from the city. We've, you can see the cracks in this picture. They run throughout the court. We've tried patching before. Right now, we're looking at a reconstruction of the tennis courts. We've submitted to the USTA to get additional funding. They're they may end up causing us more issues and problems than the money they're going to give us, so we may drop that and just proceed with the funding that we have at this point. Hope to finalize the work next month so that we know what we're doing. We'll get some bids. There's not many tennis court contractors out there, so we'll get some direct bids from some contractors. And then it's a matter of coordinating construction with the Recreation Department and all the classes that go there. The revised project will include striping for junior courts, which is just shorter baselines and things like that, and which will allow more play. It's something the USTA is really pushing, and I think it makes sense. It's just another stripe on the ground.
Has there been any discussion out there about pickleball courts in here, Steve?
Just the city manager stopped by my office a couple of days ago and mentioned it to me. I have to admit I don't know a lot about it.
So we did get a request to restripe for pickleball, and I talked to our recreation staff about that, and their recommendation at this point is not to do that, it's a different game, and the perception that they have was that there's already use conflicts between pickleball and tennis, and that these were built as tennis courts and they're used as tennis courts, and to try to convert it to another use, they didn't recommend that at this time. So I'll be meeting with somebody, a pickleball advocate, and since we have some more asphalt going into McGregor, tell them that maybe they can help fund that and get a pickleball court out there in McGregor too. But that's what the recreation program at this time is recommending, not to create more use conflicts out there because they feel like there's already enough as it is.
But we're going to see a lot of demand for that in the future. It's one of the fastest growing sports out there.
It does seem that way. So maybe at the same time we build our skate park, we can get a pickleball court in adjacent.
Okay. Thank you.
These last few are more studies in our capital improvement project leading to larger projects down the line. The first one is the Stockton Avenue Bridge Assessment for flood hazard. And what it's going to do is it's an analysis of potential for a log jam at the Stockton Avenue Bridge, and a full discussion on what our options are if that's a real concern. I think it is a real concern, but what our options are. Certainly rebuilding that bridge would be a huge impact on the community, and a loss of a historical structure there. So I think we want to try and find if there's any other solutions to replacing that bridge. Yes.
I'm sure they've thought of this because they're consultants and they're experts. But in my travels, I see bridges like this all the time. It's a pretty ample opening, and I see the log jam has been averted with the construction of steel bows on the upstream side of the two supports for the bridge, and it makes sure that everything that comes down the river goes onto the bridge.
So steel bows?
Well,
bows of ships.
they're like this.
Yeah, I kind of envision a wing wall that comes from both the piers and angles out, so as it hits it,
Another way to do it.
it deflects. To
But
the
I've after this has come up, I've been noticing,
Yes,
and
yeah.
it's done quite a bit.
I think we need to find an alternative to replacing the bridge, and that's what we're going to study. So, I've discussed the scope with the consultant. They are putting together their scope and their proposal. I should have it next month. This is I have him working on a lot of projects. This isn't his highest priority project, but I anticipate completing the study over the winter, and we'll bring a report to you in the fall. The study is fully funded. Obviously, it's a multi-million-dollar project. Whatever you do, and we'll be seeking funding sources and grant funding to help us build whatever we decide to go with.
We went through this once before, Steve. Stephanie Ray remembers
Several
everything.
times, yes. We,
I know my predecessor was very excited about getting this done, so.
Raising the bridge 6 feet is not acceptable.
Yes.
I mean, you would have a Venice-type canal there, where cars would have to go up a slope and then down a slope to get in it. I don't know how you can raise it. You can widen it, but I don't know how you
can we turn it into a drawbridge?
We're going to have
Cut
fun.
it in half
Yeah.
and raise it up. I know it's not exactly historically correct, but gee, wouldn't it do the job?
I think a toll bridge works for me, but that's just...
Absolutely.
One that shuts down in rush hour.
Well, I'll tell you, I just listened to a book on tape about Abraham Lincoln, and one of his first early cases when he was practicing lawyer was defending a bridge, the community and the bridge company against shippers who were claiming the bridge was causing them to crash into it and lose their loads so that they couldn't deliver it. And when he was very, very, very interesting. If you want to listen to something very interesting about his demeanor and how he did his background work and his research, and then he just got up and presented it. And he got the statistics about, and there may have been 40 crashes, but there were 1,600 that weren't that they weren't crashed into, and so maybe, and he had eyewitnesses that came and talked about how, yes, many of those drivers of those ships were seen drunk afterwards, or before, and anyway, it's very interesting, but the maritime
believe that.
I can
this would
believe
be
the
the bridge.
drunk.
I know some ship captains.
Anyway, the bridge company won. He won in
Depending
court
on
for
your
the
boat.
bridge company so that they could continue that huge commerce area. I forget the name of the river now, and they could continue.
I just have a dumb question. I don't know how old that bridge is, but there's a lot of discussion of our infrastructure. How sound is that bridge? Do we ever
So
try to figure
Caltrans
that out?
actually comes and inspects that bridge for us, and it's doing just fine. It's
Okay.
built out of concrete. It's not going anywhere. There's no cracking in it. We probably need to resurface it sometime in the next 10 years, but that would be about it.
Okay, so who inspects?
Caltrans Bridge
Caltrans?
inspectors,
Okay,
yes.
like every 10 years or every 5 years?
It recently changed. It used to be every other year. Now it's every 4 years, I believe.
Okay, thanks.
So right next door to the Stockton Avenue Bridge is what I call the Stockton Avenue Bridge Parkway. Obviously, it's where the Begonia Festival floats go in, and other people, a lot of people go and sit on that bench in the foreground of the picture and view the creek. The pump house building back here, there's an old fire pump in there that's no longer used. This building is falling apart. The access here does not meet current standards, so we have quite a few issues here that are, potential liability issues for us. So included in the CIP is some funding to look at some conceptual designs of how to improve this area, basically to build some ADA compliant ramps from the street down to the level pathway down here, demolish this, put in some kind of deck and viewing area. We really haven't gotten into the details of it, and certainly that'll be something we'll have to discuss with the council and the community as we move forward. Right now, we've signed the engineering contract for that. I believe they have completed the survey work. If they haven't, it'll be done very shortly. The goal is to try and have some fundamental concept plans in October, and we'll begin that discussion. So that's all that's funded right now is this concept design, so we can figure out what we want to do, and then we'll get additional funding as we move forward.
It'd be interesting to have a community meeting as to what we should do with that place, what kind of ideas people might have. It's sort of forgotten. I mean, I've walked there a million times, but I don't think about all the different things that might actually go on there.
I think keeping the existing uses is probably the biggest thing, in just making it safer and keeping the place for the judging for the Begonia Festival.
Yeah, most important thing, at least
I don't know if that's the most
annually.
important, because I think they could judge from just about anywhere.
That's one day a year.
use, yeah.
We can erect a scaffold there for that one day.
right.
I don't think we should
But
fasten this
I do
park
think,
off that single
yeah,
use.
having a viewing area here that the public can access, because right now it takes a ladder, might not be a bad call. So
Even though I'm the one up there, doesn't matter. It's once a year.
we don't want you getting hurt, Michael. Enhanced bike lanes, this was added during the budget session at all the Highway 1 crossings. So the county is actually taking the lead on kind of coming up with a county standard that all the jurisdictions then will follow. They have a plan that they're doing at Soquel Drive and Highway 1. They are currently have submitted that to Caltrans to get their intake. All these works on the crossings need Caltrans approval. So we have this concept design that shows the bike lanes going across the ramps, and then green pocket areas where the bikes would wait for signal changes. And that's kind of what the county has proposed at this point. And then the other object would be to have green lanes that go all the way through the intersections. So at this point, we've completed these conceptual plans. I have one for each intersection or each undercrossing, and kind of waiting for the county to go through the review process with Caltrans. Let's let them push and pull and argue with Caltrans over that and establish this county standard. Once they've done that, it should be relatively quickly for us to put together our construction drawings. We do need to get a Caltrans encroachment permit. We would submit to that, but if we're already doing the same thing the county's doing, that should be pretty quick. Unfortunately, I can't promise Caltrans timing at all. Sometimes they're pretty quick and sometimes they're pretty slow. So I think construction of the summer of 2016 is a good target for this. It could go quicker, could go much quicker if the county gets their approved plans and everybody's happy for it. We'll know exactly what to submit, and then we figure out, I think we have $30,000 in funding for this. That might be enough for one crossing or all three crossings, depending on what they come up with. And then the final project, I believe, is the village drainage assessment here on Capitol Avenue. You all know the problem. Essentially, we have signed an engineering contract, and we've walked it with the engineer to look at it. Essentially, we did some survey work. The pipe from this inlet here to front of David Ling's is perfectly flat. And that's not good for making water go through it. So, we're going to do some forensic work and try and figure out if we can deepen it at David Ling and give it some more fall. If you just build a bigger pipe, that's not the answer, because it's just going to fill up with water. It may flood 2 minutes later than if it does now. So we're looking at it. They're doing some survey work in conjunction with the previous project at the bridge. They've promised, we know this is something we want to get on and try and get something in place this winter, so they're doing their drainage analysis to figure out, what CFS of flow we need to design for and all that. And, we'll look to have a drainage study completed in a month here. And then, depending on what we come up with, I think it's a $10,000 budget right now. We'll come back if there's an easy fix. We'll come back and try and find some funding for an easy fix. If there's not an easy fix, we'll let you know that too.
It might be cheaper just to raise the floor level of Vice. Lift the buildings up.
One door.
Yeah, if it doesn't go into Vice, it probably go to the next house then too. So, we need to look at all that. Raising the curb's really not an option. But, I've lots of ideas out there. Let's see what the numbers show us, and we'll come back.
Wide-array flood doors for that.
Do we
Just out of curiosity, where does it empty to? I mean, there's not much
Actually,
draw.
goes that pipe actually goes under that.
Right to the ocean, okay.
Right there. It comes out, it actually runs under this building, and daylight's right out here.
Should we check
So what's
any
the-
other pipes in the village?
Well, certainly we know we have other drainage issues in Monterey and on San Jose. As we were looking at this was decided, because this was the first one that floods, this is what we're looking at right now. After we get through this, we can look at the other
That was
ones.
what we funded.
Yeah, this was,
I'm just saying, it brings up the question.
Oh, we had
It
lots of
does,
projects.
yeah.
They were $10,000
Right.
each. so
Yeah.
it was-
yeah.
But we should get our Zone 5 representative working on that one.
That's right.
Yeah, whoever that is, yeah. Are those cleaned out? I mean, do they have
Yes.
sand? They are cleaned out.
We'll clean out all the inlets prior to every winter.
But how about sediment in the line itself and like sanitation blows?
Well, generally you don't clean storm drains, they'll clean themselves out as you get rain.
Okay.
You just want to clean out the inlets. The inlets go deeper, so the inlets should collect most of the sediment.
Got it, okay.
Steve, you've been under a certain amount of fire and, that the projects are languishing. Besides not asking you to make reports like this, is there any way we can help you get things done quicker?
I've thought about that, and, my one thing would probably be that we hire project managers, not necessarily just for construction management, but for project management, So one of the projects might be the roundabout. I mean, just keeping that thing going is going to be, there's so many different aspects to it that would be my recommendation. We need somebody dedicated to the projects themselves. Unfortunately, my time gets split, and I depend on consultants, and then consultants get busy on other projects, and all of a sudden, 3 weeks has turned into 2 months before I get a report back from a consultant. So,
Maybe, more pressure on the consultants, project
Right.
management, we can divert some of Ed Morrison's time. I mean, I love the creek, but we spend an inordinate amount of money and time on the thing. The water will continue to flow, I'm sure. There are things that we can do. Maybe bring us a proposal.
I think I have one more project.
You do?
I forgot. Sanctuary trail markers. I think there's $10,000 in this. I haven't done a lot of work on this. I've looked to try and come up with a location and review concept, bring it to the council sometime in November, order the markers in January, and have them installed. I think it's mainly going to be, you can see them along East Cliff Drive on the hand railing of the walkway that's there. We'll just add some of those in key areas. So that's it.
Steve, one more. Our forgotten child, the wharf. Are we at a time right now in making time to start a program for the wharf, or even looking at some type of engineering or what we need to do as far as long-term maintenance plan for the wharf?
The wharf is certainly always in need of more maintenance. I think it probably needs a major replanking and pile replacement project. The first step would be probably to design a project. I know there are state departments that are helping rebuild wharfs, but that's highly competitive. You need to come to them with the full set of plans and concepts and costs, and they're going to give you 30% of the cost or something like that. But that's something we could, if you want to proceed with that, I would recommend we get a detailed engineered report done, not necessarily conditions of the pilings. I think we say we want to replace 50% of the pilings, especially the ones at the nose right now that are rusting through, and re-deck the wharf again. if we want to look at, adding buildings out there, I know we've talked about the restrooms, that could be included in there, but you're probably looking at a $2 million project.
Well, I don't think it's soon enough that we start.
But I think
at
the
least
first thing
planning
would
for
be
it.
to start planning it and to determine
So
what that scope
would
of
you-
work is.
Could you go out right now and get a proposal for an engineering firm that deals with that kind of structures and
Yes.
come and talk to us about what?
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Okay, with council? Time? Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. Please, step forward.
Sorry, I was waiting till the...
You got to come up.
Please come up to... It is, we're going to do that right now.
I actually have two questions for Steve, and they're kind of related. It's about the sidewalk on Park Avenue. I'm wondering how far it goes, how long it goes along Park Avenue. And the second question is, actually, it's the same question for the rail trail segment along the railway. And the reason I'm asking is I'm trying to visualize access to McGregor Park, as you mentioned before, Mayor Norton.
Mayor, would you like me to answer those questions?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
The Park Avenue sidewalk goes from Monterey Avenue, actually Washburn, all the way up to Wesley. And then it does connect in, there's a short sidewalk that goes from Wesley to Cabrillo now that probably going to end up getting reconstructed. And it will include a crossing at both Washburn and at Cabrillo. So it ties into the sidewalk that's on the other side that goes along up toward New Brighton State Park. And then the rail trail project we have right now is literally just in front of this parking lot above us here. It'll go from there up to Monterey Avenue and then across the street. The rail trail, master plan includes a trail that goes all the way through the city up there, and I think we'll be looking at ways to implement the rest of the rail trail project probably in the near future.
Good evening, Richard Lippy, Monterey Avenue. And I'll be brief. First, I just want to compliment Steve Jesberg on all of the projects that he is coordinating all at one time. I've only had the opportunity to be in his office one time, and I was amazed at all the plans and all of the documents that he deals with on a daily basis, and I'm more impressed seeing what we have today. And just a couple of things I'd like to throw out. I was recently interested in becoming more familiar with the status of McGregor Park, and I couldn't find anything online. And I'm wondering, is this information online, all of these projects right here?
Not in a concise format, no.
Okay. All right. But I'm just thinking maybe to give concerned citizens or interested citizens a heads up, it'd be nice if, and I know that's a whole nother project, so I wouldn't expect that to go up anytime soon, but I'm just saying that there are people that are interested in that. And following on with Councilman Termini's comment, I was thinking we have lots of volunteers who work on commissions, and couldn't you reach out to the general public and look for volunteers, qualified volunteers, as you say, maybe one individual to help you with specific projects? People who have knowledge maybe or an interest in that area, and they would be volunteers under you.
Certainly something we could look at, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone else in the public like to address us on the Public Works projects? Thank you. Okay, what is, Jamie, what's our direction on this? Just accept the report?
Yeah, I think the recommendation this evening was just to accept the report. Obviously, there was a couple of items that you called out. One was to look potentially at bringing back a proposal for PM, looking at how we might budget that to help out with some of these projects. In addition, taking a look at the wharf and seeing whether or not we might be able to get an estimate or an engineering assessment. But I think those are the two key action items, other than some sort of more minor design detail questions that were related to specific projects.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we we accept the report, and we'll move on. Next item, please.
Steve, I'd like to get a copy, please.
Of the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Absolutely, I'll email it to you. Oh, it'll go out in the Friday report with everything else.
Okay, we move
Council.
back to the pulled consent item for consider a resolution approving the final map for Surf and Sand Mobile Home Park subdivision. Rich, you have the reins?
Sorry.
Are you moving that ahead of?
You probably did too.
I think we're doing C and D, and then
We're going to do C and D, and then we're going to do the 407 last.
There's also the planning, you have to report on
What?
the zoning issues and options.
Oh, we have to get that report.
I didn't know what the order. Are you
It's
doing-
item D on your agenda, it's the final page.
Are you going to do D and then go to CD, or where's your? I didn't know where you placed that.
I got C and D next. Where,
Well, we still
this
have
one.
D on this agenda. Yeah. Do you want to do D and then go back to
M-
D?
M- Mr. Mayor, you know, my recommendation might be that we tackle this one, because I do know that we have a member of the public who's
Yeah.
here for this one. Is there anyone here who wants to watch for the zoning ordinance item? Okay.
Okay, we'll do C and D, then we'll go back to item D. Okay. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. By way of background, as most of you probably recall, the Surf and Sand Mobile Home Subdivision had a long, sordid history with the city, which initiated in August of 2009 when the city council denied a request by the property owner to close the park. Subsequently to that, in May of 2010, the city council denied a subsequent tentative map request based on near unanimous resident opposition to the proposal, failure to comply with the Mello Act, and the applicant's stated goal to terminate rent control. In November 2012, the applicant submitted a new 73-lot tentative map. That application did have majority resident support, and as you recall, the city council did enter into a settlement agreement under which the city agreed not to require affordable housing replacement. In exchange, the applicant assumed the city's economic support for existing low and moderate income residents in that park. That tentative map was approved in August 2013. As you recall, there were some concerns raised by several of the council members and members of the public regarding utility and infrastructure improvements, displacement of existing residents, and ongoing affordability standards. Unfortunately, those concerns, there wasn't much the city could do about it. State law does preclude cities and local agencies from requiring conformance with general plan, zoning, or subdivision standards. It in fact limits our review to Subdivision Map Act Section 66-427.4 and .5, which essentially requires an applicant to prepare a relocation impact report. The applicant did that. It was satisfied. The project was approved with conditions for the applicant to draft CC&Rs, rental purchase option agreements, to be reviewed by the Community Development Department, City Attorney, and those conditions have been satisfied. In May of this year, the applicant submitted a final map request to the city. In accordance with the Subdivision Map Act, the city is required to approve the final map if it is in substantial conformance with the previously approved tentative map. It's staff's belief that the final map is consistent with the approved tentative map. In regard to ongoing concerns about utilities, at the August 13 City Council hearing, which the tentative map was approved, the applicant stated that water and power upgrades would begin in the spring of 2014, and that previous sewer issues had been resolved by the sanitation district. Unfortunately, no work has been completed to date, and contrary to some information from the applicant, the California Bureau of Real Estate does not require any utility improvements as part of their process. They simply require disclosure that sewer, water, power, and roads are available, but they don't assess the condition or require any improvements. However, I have been in contact also with the Soquel Creek Water District, and they have assured me that they will require water facility improvements through that park, and that each individual lot have a individual water meter. It brings us back to the initial conundrum, though. The city really has no legal authority to condition this final map to provide any utility improvements. One alternative that staff has or would present to the council if we have an interest is we could attempt to assist residents to form a benefit assessment district to finance future improvements should the property owner fail to do so. As you may recall, that the city did that successfully at Brookvale Terrace a number of years ago, and we'd certainly be happy to reach out to those residents after the subdivision's final to offer our support. That concludes my presentation. Staff does recommend that you approve the final map this evening. Thank you.
Discussion, Michael?
A couple of questions for you. In view of us not having any power on this after this day, I mean, if we pass this right now, we'll never see it again, correct?
That's correct, although I would point out, I don't know that we have really any, there's no discretionary authority today. This is kind of an odd ministerial process that goes to a public hearing.
True, but how do we, A, guarantee that future prospective owners are made aware of impending assessments for infrastructure? And B, and more importantly to me, the low-income residents who are just tenants at this point, will any of this fall to them? Because I can see this as being, you know, an end of tenancy to them if it's a substantial cost to be involved with the infrastructure improvements.
One of the requirements to convert the park to owner-occupied units is, and I'll just read the statute because it's pretty directly on point to your question. As to non-purchasing residents who are lower-income households, as defined in the Health and Safety Code, the monthly rent, including any applicable fees or charges for use of any pre-conversion amenities, may increase from the pre-conversion rent by an amount equal to the average monthly increase in rent in the 4 years immediately preceding the conversion, except that in no event shall the monthly rent be increased by an amount greater than the average monthly percentage increase in the CPI for the most recently reported period. So it is not legally permissible for assessments to be made against tenants for upgrades.
Even in forms other than rent? Because I know that statute, I'm familiar with it, and we looked at it when we were trying to guarantee the low-income residents a lifetime of tenancy, but in any other form, could they be
I read this
jeopardy?
statute as restricting that because it also applies to any applicable fees. So.
Okay, and then the first part of my question, which is how do we guarantee that, and I know they're required by law,
right,
but how do we guarantee that future tenants or purchasers of the property don't come in and purchase a lot for X amount of dollars and realize they can't flush their toilets?
And I think as the planning director indicated, you know, the city is not going to have a whole lot of regulatory authority over that. Just as you don't currently under the mobile home park laws, since HCD is arguably the regulatory authority over that.
Can we make it, you know, apparent in our proceedings, in our public record, that, you know, this is a concern and anyone who's doing due diligence should be able to recognize that? Thank you.
We had a verbal commitment, as you brought up, Rich, from the developers of this property, that they would take care of improving the infrastructure on this project if we approve their tentative map. They said that in that hearing. I went back and listened to it. It clearly said that. So, in my eyes, they have a responsibility here, regardless of it being a condition of approval, to bring leased up to a standard rate the infrastructure of that subdivision. If you did a subdivision anywhere in the state of California under Subdivision Map Act, you'd be required to provide water, you'd be required to sewer, storm drain, and roads. All those things would be provided. For some reason, mobile home parks don't apply under this, even though they're allowed to do a subdivision. And I'm dumbfounded the Department of Real Estate doesn't take a stronger hand in this. For once, if there was, is there CC&Rs already developed?
They did submit draft CCNRs. We reviewed them. They appeared adequate to us. However, those are subject to DRE or BRE approval, so they could be amended based on the state's direction.
So if it's my understanding that part of the CCNRs is a homeowner's budget. They're going to establish a homeowners association homeowners budget. Has that been established? That's my concern, because what I'm seeing happening here is they're pushing off all the infrastructure and utilities costs over onto potential purchasers instead of taking care of themselves like they committed to us.
Yeah, I do share your concerns. It's frustrating for staff. You know, we're accustomed to having some regulatory authority over these projects to safeguard it for future city residents. This is one of those cases where the state really handcuffs us and preempts us from applying any local control. In regards to the prior commitments, I did see the project engineer in the audience. He may be able to address. It's my understanding that the applicant was trying to secure some grant funding for that work. They were unsuccessful, and they tell me they're going to make another run at it, but that's all the information I can really share.
I don't understand how they can do a budget if they don't know the condition of the infrastructure. In other words, if the Department of Real Estate is approving a budget, it has to cover the costs of infrastructure through the life of this project. They don't even have a starting point to even know what the infrastructure is and what they're going to charge. And certainly, they're used to having all this infrastructure being new and in place, and then you start aging it, and the costs go against that with time. How does this work? I mean, I can't believe that they wouldn't put some kind of control in. Their job is to protect the public, and they're not doing it here, if that's the case.
You know, my conversation with the representative at the Department of Real Estate was that they don't look at condition. It's simply, is there sewer, is there water, are there roads? If it's available, they check the box, they move on. My guess, without knowing it for certain, is that they don't really have the regulatory authority either to require upgrades. But
well, let me tell you what the condition is there now, because I know people live in there. The condition is the water system is that there's no individual meters on these. Nobody knows what the other person is using. I'm sure the water department doesn't like this to start with. There's no individual meters. And so what happens is there's one master meter there, and what happens is the owner of the property, which, think about this, is not going to have control of that property, because once a homeowners association is put in place, it's the homeowners association. He allocates what he thinks that each person should pay. I'm not saying that he cheats anybody. I'm just saying that he personally determines how much water he uses. He doesn't know. He just spreads it out among it. That you can't operate a subdivision like that of water. The power situation, the PG&E situation, is so bad that they can't bring a new modular into that park because the electrical demand for a new unit is higher than they can offer at each individual place. So when you buy into that park, you can't bring a new unit in there. You can't upgrade it. You can bring an old unit in there and do it. Okay, and then the sewer, I guess somebody said they fixed that. I don't know. They've had a problem in the past with it. Storm drains is definitely a problem, and roads is definitely a problem. So what we're passing on to the people who are buying into it, or long-term tenants of this thing, is a huge problem. I'm just not ready until we get some answers or commitment from the developers of this property that they're going to take care of these things ahead of time. I'm not willing to give them a final amount. This is our last stopgate for correcting these problems without passing it on. So I would like to look at every avenue possible that we can take to find out how we can get a commitment from the developers or protection from DRE. That's okay.
Just for city attorney, legally, what grounds do we have to withhold giving them approval?
Well, let me quote from the relevant statutory provision. It's going to take me a second because I have to open up my... This is Government Code Section 66458, which concerns the approval of a final map. And here's the pertinent language. The legislative body, which is the City Council, at the meeting at which it receives the map, which is tonight, or at its next regular meeting after the meeting at which it receives the map, shall approve the map if it conforms to the requirements of this chapter and any local subdivision ordinance applicable at the time of the approval or conditional approval of the tentative map and any rulings made thereunder. If the legislative body does not approve or disapprove the map within the prescribed time or any authorized extension thereof, and the map conforms to all the requirements and rulings, it shall be deemed approved, and the clerk of the legislative body shall certify or state its approval thereon.
So if we take the option to say no, at the next meeting, it automatically becomes yes.
Well, you could take another crack at it at the next meeting, but if you don't act at that point, then it's deemed approved.
And have they met all the obligations as they're stated?
As the planning director and I have reviewed them, we believe that they meet the conditions of the tentative map. I should add that the concerns that you're expressing were brought to our attention, prior to this meeting, and I've spent a very significant amount of time researching this and share the frustration that has been expressed by council members and by the planning director with regard to what seems to be the state legislature's strong policy toward encouraging this type of transfer of ownership to take place. And so I've spent a very significant amount of time reading several cases that have interpreted the provisions of the Subdivision Map Act that we're discussing tonight, and it's my opinion that the city's discretion in regard to approving the final map and adding additional conditions that would address some of these upgrade concerns is very limited, exactly as has been presented by the planning director this evening.
Yeah, just based on that, I mean, I'm not inclined to do anything to stop this. I did like the suggestion, Councilman Termini, to offer some guidance or warning, for lack of a better word, for anyone. And I don't know how that would manifest itself, but I mean, I think that would be us offering our input that this is a buyer beware situation. Our hands are tied. But you should be aware that there's some conditions in there that are less than satisfactory. Whatever we're legally allowed to do, but in the same way, protecting someone who thinks that, hey, this is a great place, it's got a great view, I can go up here and get all this stuff, and then have infrastructure problems. So, just my take on that.
Josh?
I certainly support the idea of reaching out to the owner and presenting the idea of a bond that the infrastructure could be brought up to code. But I take note of something you mentioned, that the water district requires meters. So the question I have is, this gets into the realm of utilities. So we have 3 utilities here that are important: water, power, electricity, and sanitation. I can't see how any utility would allow something like this to go, because they have a public responsibility to make sure that certain issues and concerns of the public are upheld. So in terms of water, that's obvious in the times we are right now. We need to regulate the use of water so that people aren't doing too much, and we have a broader concern for the whole county. In terms of sewer, I have no idea what that sewer system is out there like, but that's definitely a public sanitation issue waiting to happen. So that to me is a major issue. Power. You cannot tell me, I've looked at all those power hookups, they're ancient, most of them. You cannot tell me that's not a danger to the individual homes out there, and perhaps other things that I don't even know about. So I would like to know, it seems to me a reasonable way to do this is to notify these utilities that we have an issue here, a potential public hazard on multiple levels. And if they actually have the power to require things, this is the time to look into it. And that tells me, to me, that this agreement shouldn't go forward until those public issues are taken care of. So I'd like us to act on that in the next 2 weeks and notify them. So my other perspective is we have to take the responsibility to notify other responsible agencies in the government that there's potential problems here. And they will feel the need to act. So I move we put this off for a week. Until the next session.
Before we do that,
Okay.
before I second it,
Okay.
I'm inclined to second it. Is there any vehicle other than language in the minutes of the motion that I was prepared to make that would send a clearer message to future buyers? And I'm not trying to be punitive against this particular landowner. I know that when people become dissatisfied, that podium is where they come to. I don't want to be here when they come there. And I want to make sure that it develops in a reasonable and equitable fashion. Is there any other thing that we can do? Be it known, blah, blah, blah. I don't think we can record anything, but certainly there has to be something a little more forceful than just my ramblings of a motion in the minutes.
When we had rent control, we did put out a brochure for prospective buyers because we wanted people to really understand what they were buying and what they were getting into. So we did a brochure that year that we asked the local realtors that sold mobile homes to please pass out. I don't know how many of them got out there, but it was sort of your rights under the city of Capitola, that we have rent control, we have this, if you have complaints or issues, here's what you can do about it. You can contact someone in the city if you have questions. And we could put together a little brochure or something and, for tenants.
That's certainly possible, but based on how well we were able to get the information about the lack of longevity of Pacific Cove Park through the realtors to the prospective buyers, I'm not looking for any realtors to bring up anything negative about anything ever. So, not that realtors aren't nice people. I don't want. There's probably some realtors. There's a realtor under a rock. I don't want to.
I have an idea.
Is there any suggestions?
I do have a suggestion.
From staff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to hear if they have something that can guide us to help us, because our hearts are all in the same place. We want to protect the potential citizens and the ones that are existing in Capitola, but we're not the legal authority. So if there is a suggestion, I would love to hear it.
Let me offer my 2 cents rather than continue to put our attorney in the hot seat here, which I think staff shares all of the concerns the council has identified. Frankly, people here who sit at this desk and work behind us, this is their job to make sure that subdivisions happen in a responsible way that doesn't pass on problems to future buyers. I mean, that's what we do in the planning department. So just because you're not hearing staff echoing the concerns necessarily that you're mentioning doesn't mean that they're not shared. My suggestion is that it sounds like you have the legal authority to wait a meeting. You can do that. I understand the position it puts you in to make this vote. I think beyond that it gets very problematic. I think that for Brookvale Terrace, predates my relationship with the city, but I know that the city formed a benefit assessment district in conjunction with the HOA, the past owner, to help finance and fund some of the improvements. We can let them know that that opportunity would exist, and the city would be happy to partner with them to make that an opportunity that works. I'm not overly confident that that would actually come to pass, but certainly it's a vehicle that Brookvale Terrace used to help buy and improve the infrastructure in their park, and I don't know why we wouldn't consider something similar on similar terms with Surf and Sand if that became an opportunity. So between now and the next meeting, we certainly could reach out and offer that to them. I think that I'm a little leery about the city producing some sort of disclosure for a privately owned piece of property. On the face of it, I can imagine all sorts of lawsuits start flying around about about that. That being said, I think that this conversation and the past conversations we've had have been pretty darn well publicized, and we need to continue to make sure that our concerns about the infrastructure are clearly heard, so that future buyers who do take the time to Google the site get the information.
Well, hearing that, the statement you just made makes me inclined to second Jacques' motion with the amendment, if he so accepts it, that offer we reach out to the owner and make that offer. Otherwise, I saw no reason to delay this till the next meeting. Now I see the rationale.
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, the delay...
That was a second in case
Okay.
nobody...
And frankly, I'm not sure that the delay really gets you too much, but, if nothing else, it's a symbolic show of frustration.
Okay,
And the offer to make things better.
Right, and let's put that out there. I mean, I understand that's what you guys are asking for, is how can we solve this problem? And frankly, it's not a great tool, but it's the last tool in the toolkit that we can come up with.
okay, I have a question. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
One question, Rich, is that conditions of the approval of the final map, one of them is that they've completed the formation of a structure for a homeowners association, and that they've completed CC&Rs to the city's requirements. And that includes that they do a homeowner's budget. Is that part of it?
They do have to do a final homeowner's budget. They did not have a budget at this time. It's, I don't know exactly how they would develop it at this stage.
Well, usually what happens is actually they develop it, they have an outside firm do that for them, and what they do, they submit it to the Department of Real Estate for their review.
Right.
Okay. I think it's essential that the Department of Real Estate knows what the conditions are in which this property is being condominiumized, because there probably hasn't been a lot of mobile home parks that have been converted in the way that this is being done. We also, I think that we have a verbal commitment from the owner standing up in front of us, and Albert standing in front of us telling us that they're going to take care of all the infrastructure problems. I think the first question should be going back to them and saying, are you going to fulfill that? If they say we're fulfilled, that really drops, that really, and gives us some kind of commitment. And it shows that in the CC&Rs, where the people who are buying these units are paying for a new infrastructure, not an old infrastructure. That's a significant difference in cost to them. Because remember, the day that owner of that property sells 3 lots, he is no longer part of the deal. The homeowners association take over. He steps aside. He does nothing. He just has to pay his homeowner fees for the rest of the 64 or whatever it is. He has to pay those fees, it's just a burden on him. He has to pay that. But the point is that within a very short period of time with the transfer of title here, the burden goes strictly over to the homeowners association, and the owner's gone. He's just collected his money and left. Not fair. So, along with the motion, I support your motion to continue to wait. I would like some contact with DRE as to what safeguards that these people have in this subdivision, in buying the subdivision lots in that subdivision the way they are, and that there is a decent budget for approved or looked at by the city for the homeowner's budget.
Okay, so I'm making the motion. Include what Michael said. Can you repeat that?
Well, I seconded the motion that you
Yes.
made already, which is delaying this one meeting,
Correct.
with the amendment that we offer to the owner. I'm not certain of what the instrument was, the
Benefit
funding
Assessment District.
The assessment district, to help fund the infrastructure.
Okay, and then you want a full CC&R and notify the state realty.
I want, the job of the Department of Real Estate is to protect the public, and health and safety is an issue. This is an issue in health and safety. So, my point is that I would like Rich to go back and find out what requirements are going to be made from the Department of Real Estate to the establishment of this homeowners association in this subdivision.
Okay.
That those people are protected.
Aren't we drifting into an area that we're not allowed to be in?
We
We're
have
doing
no-
information.
We have no authority to enforce anything, isn't
Right,
that the...
just informing. Yeah, we're just,
Just
okay.
understand, we have no authority,
Educational thing.
Right.
we have no authority to enforce anything, so we have to be careful how we structure
Right.
what we're asking for.
I interpreted the mayor's comment as primarily that we would be sharing information with the Department of Real Estate.
Correct, correct. So, and I accept that,
And
but-
the information is, to my mind, that which is already a matter of public record, including representations made by the owner with regard to park improvements.
Right. Okay. So I'd like to add to that, that we inform the utilities that do not know at this time that this transfer is being anticipated. And the Water District obviously knows because you've already done that homework, but I'm thinking the Sanitation District and PG&E as a public utility. Basically, I want the utilities to know that this transfer is taking place and that there is a potential for problems.
Before we act on the motion, this is a public hearing. I'm Bob DeWitt's here. If you would like to have some input on this, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob DeWitt, civil engineer representing the owner. Put my name down here. I can tell you that our office has done substantial work on the utilities on both the sewer and the water, and that our subconsultants, electrical and mechanical engineers, have been working with PG&E on upgrading the power and the gas distribution in the park. For reasons unknown to me, and it's becoming more apparent this evening and after reading some correspondence this afternoon, I understand the owner was going after some grant funding to assist in that, and that hadn't quite happened yet, and that perhaps caused the delay. But I can tell you that the plans are well along in for the upgrades for the utilities that everybody seems to be concerned about here. I must say that the MAP Act is pretty clear that there isn't a lot of discretion on the approval of the final map. It meets the conditions of the tentative map, and as the attorney said, you know, it must be approved by the city. There isn't really supposed to be a question on that. So other than that, I don't really have anything else to say.
Bob, you probably don't have the answer to this, but do you know if the owners have plans to putting this infrastructure in before this subdivision is offered its white papers or before he sells lots? Or is this a cost that's going to be passed on to the homeowners there? Do you know that?
I don't know that. I would say that, you know, the owner certainly has obligations, disclosure rules, to disclose to potential buyers conditions of the property. I mean, that's universal, and there's no way to duck that. If he doesn't upgrade, you know, it's going to affect the sales price. There can be a lot cheaper lots than they would be if they're fully improved.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, Bob?
Just a comment. I'm not sure we can find this out or how it factors in, but I'm not sure a homeowners association has been formed there, that they've been having any discussions about this. I'm not sure, but you know, if you could ask some people, and I'll ask around too, because I haven't heard anything about that, so I don't think that's happening, and so I'd be a little cautious about, you know, talking about a benefit assessment district. They need to start at square one, where the residents actually have an association and are getting involved with this and getting organized. I don't think they are at all. I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Okay,
If I could just offer a comment on that. We've done assessment district work in my career, and you know, that's a cost that is apportioned to all the members of the assessment district, so they're going to end up paying anyway, and there's about a 30 to 40% increase on the construction costs, or the normal costs, because of all the you know, the assessment proceedings and paying for attorneys and assessment reports and all of that. So certainly that's an option, but it doesn't really solve the problem for the residents, I don't think.
Thank you, Bob. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Does everybody understand the motion? Are we okay? Okay. Staff understand the motion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. One no. The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we move to item D, which is consider authorizing the City Council response to the 2015 Santa Cruz Grand Jury final report.
I'll make a quick response for you, and then if we have specific questions, staff can help out a little bit. As you're aware, the grand jury issued 3 different reports here recently that pertain to the city. One regarding the provision of emergency shelters for homeless individuals, another report regarding the cities and how they're dealing with composting issues, and a third report regarding pension liabilities. Overall, the report, the responses that are attached to your staff report indicate general agreement with the pensions findings. The key findings were that the city should disclose in a better format how its overall pension picture. The city of Capitola was commended for having established its OPEB. We were the only city in the county that had an OPEB fund to pre-fund our post-retirement health benefits. And in addition, to continue to research ways to reduce the long-term liability associated with CalPERS, which, as the council knows, is a high priority for both this council and for staff. The findings that were associated with the recycling, the composting study, staff disagreed with a number of the key findings, the primary one being that the city of Capitola has a contract to take its composting down to the Marina landfill, and the Marina landfill has more than 100 years of capacity down there for composting material. Lastly, the response on the homeless services was a reunified response. It's not required by law, but I worked closely with the county and the city of Santa Cruz, and nearly the same language is going to each one of the city councils and the board of supervisors in terms of the overall response. In some cases agreeing with the findings that the grand jury made, and in other cases pointing out that some of the recommendations had already been implemented. With that, I'm available for questions.
Questions, staff?
Yeah, or public, or?
You pulled it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I did pull it. So on page 57, you talk about the fact that improve the transparency of the city budget. A new chart showing the total retirement costs will be part of that process. That's a great improvement. Thank you very much. And then on page 58, you said that this requires further analysis, basically to deal with reduction in public services. You say that to address larger actuarial on funded pension liability, certain things are going to need to be done, and you identify 3 things. One, address the possibilities to increase payments to CalPERS to reduce the unfunded liability as one, and become fully funded in fewer years. That's one possibility. The second possibility is pension obligation bonds to reduce and lock in interest rates. That's the second possibility. And to also set up a new irrevocable trust fund for future CalPERS payments. So I think everyone here knows that meeting our obligations for pension for CalPERS is very important. So these are 3 great suggestions, and I'm wondering when they're going to come back to the board, how much work it's going to take to develop some proposals and see what the scenarios are so that the city can move forward on those. And that's my question.
Staff is going to be preparing and taking some of these options to the Finance Advisory Committee. Is it next week? Tuesday. I'm seeing some nods back there. So next week, Tuesday, the Finance Advisory Committee is going to be taking a look at some of these and start to dig into it. This is, these are tough issues, and so we wanted to spend some time with the Finance Advisory Committee and ultimately develop a recommendation unified with the FAC for us to consider hopefully this winter.
Okay. So my commendation for identifying these and moving so fast on these. The next one was, which page? 67. On page 67, I just have a question. So at the bottom of the page, this is talking about insufficient emergency shelter capacity limits, access to coordinated entry services for homeless population. So at the bottom of the page, it's stated, we fully intend to have all county and city-funded emergency shelters participated in the coordinated entry system. So what city-funded emergency shelters do we have here? What do we have here in the city of Capitola? Because it talks about that. I'm not aware of any.
We don't. we don't.
Okay. Okay, do we anticipate any, or?
No, I mean, we, pursuant to our housing element, you'll recall that we rezoned some area up in the industrial area to allow a homeless shelter, but there's been no proposals or
Okay.
conversations to do anything related to that. If when you read this, that was your interpretation, I think, in some ways, the response was being written by the HAP, the Housing Action Partnership, of which the city is a member, and the city funds the winter shelter.
I know.
And so maybe just the possession and ownership of the shelter was a little unclear there. But yeah, no, there's no shelter in the city.
No, I know the city takes its responsibility in terms of homelessness issues and people that are in need and provides a lot of assistance, but I wasn't aware of anything actually in the city, so I read this and I want to know if there was something actually in the city. That's my questions.
Motion to adopt remaining items?
This is an item that can be assessed by the public. If anyone in the public would like to address the grand jury report, please step forward. Being none, we come back. Ed,
Second the
go ahead.
motion.
Okay.
Motion to adopt
second.
C&D, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, we move to receive a status report on the issues and options for the zoning update and set special meeting schedule. Rich? Yeah.
Does it have a presentation? Do you want to pull it up? 40 slides? Oh, no, wait.
I want to be here and talk.
An hour or two on this one?
There's signs all over the city in front of houses saying
Oh, no.
Okay.
Here's right on this side. Okay, yeah.
have they investigated? I don't know what I'm walking into here, but
2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go over a quick overview of the background to date, and then we'll jump into the recommendations by the Planning Commission on the zoning code update of issues and options. In June of 2014, you adopted the general plan. Since the general plan adoption, we initiated public outreach in August of 2014. We had 5 focus groups. There was a public survey that was circulated with a great response, and also one-on-one interviews with regular users of the zoning code. In November through February, we took all the information that we received from the public and during these meetings and we drafted the issues and options report. So on this slide you can see the process. So we had that public outreach, then the issues and options report was drafted. Currently we're in step 3 of Planning Commission and City Council special meetings. There's 18 issues, and to date we have the feedback from Planning Commission on our April 30th meeting earlier this year. When we had the joint meeting, there were quite a few issues that we went through with the City Council and Planning Commission. So next steps are to prepare a draft, is to meet with you and start the review of the issue and options, the recommendations by Planning Commission, and get your direction prior to final drafting the new code. So once we have your input, we'll be drafting the new zoning code. That will come back to the Planning Commission and then City Council to look at the fine-tuning, the close edits, and then it'll go out for public review and comment, followed by adoption hearings, and then we'll submit that to the Coastal Commission. Planning Commission held 4 special meetings related to the issues and options for the zoning code. There was one public workshop that was well attended in June regarding the non-conforming multifamily in the single-family zone. We also had a survey for that. That was, we had over, I think, 100 participants. So where we are today is we've got a September 21st special meeting scheduled. We'll have a start date of 6 p.m. And that will be focused on the zoning code update. and the recommendations by Planning Commission. Then there's a regular meeting scheduled for September 24th. Depending on the amount of items that you'd like to discuss, we could possibly put a couple items on that September 24th meeting, or if necessary, we'll schedule additional meetings in October. This list here shows the issues that were discussed. There were 6 issues during the April 30th meeting in which we received direction on by the Planning Commission and City Council. Next, these are the items that the Planning Commission gave us direction on. I plan to go through these with you tonight and let you know what their direction was. These items, there was a lot of very thoughtful conversation. At the end, they came to consensus on these items, and they're not very different from where the code is today, not major changes. This next list are items that we think should be discussed during the upcoming meeting in September. And tonight, after I go through this list in the second column, would love to hear if you would like any of those items moved to a special meeting as well for further conversation on these items. So let's jump into it. The first was protecting the unique qualities of residential neighborhoods. During your joint meeting, you gave us direction on floor area ratio, which will have an impact on protecting the unique qualities. Also, during the Planning Commission review, they wanted to introduce additional standards and exceptions based on lot characteristics and existing development patterns. So this is within your single-family neighborhoods, just adding new standards and exceptions. The first item that they'd like to modify is the height exception. Within the height exception right now, there's an exception for historic structures and also for half stories. The Planning Commission would like to see the height exception increase to, it'll still be at the 27-foot height limit, but also to include historic structures, larger lots, wide lots, and for homes on steep slopes. The second exception was on narrow lots. There's a second-story setback requirement within the zoning code, and on a narrow lot, that's often challenging, and to take, for a lot that's 30 feet or less in width, to not require that second-story setback. And then also another common existing development pattern throughout Capitola is there are many garages and secondary units that are right up to the rear property line or close to. And our code right now requires them to be 8 feet off that property line, and they're asking to make the code a little more flexible in allowing those rear structures to stay, because often there's a nice long driveway that leads to them and additional parking. So here is a map that was created to show the differences in lot sizes. As you can see, in Cliffwood Heights is where you're seeing the larger lot sizes. Anything green, blue, purple, those are where the larger lot sizes are, and also north of Clares. Next, this is just showing you that 30-foot exception for narrow lots. So you can see on the 30-foot wide lot not requiring that second-story stepping. So that concludes the direction that we were given for neighborhood character in your R1 district. Next, I'll jump into the accommodating high-quality development on 41st Avenue. The Planning Commission, there were several options. The options that they went with were, one, increase parking flexibility. This will be, you'll see there's within, I think, 3 different sections tonight we'll talk about more flexibility in parking. So they'd like to see, they support shared parking for multi-tenant commercial, also for residential and office uses, but they were clear that when it comes to residential and retail or restaurant entertainment mix, not to allow a reduction in parking because of the overlap. And then also streamlining the permitting process, and that would increase the commercial threshold. So right now, any commercial entity that's 3,000 square feet or larger has to go before the Planning Commission for approval, and that was to increase that threshold beyond 3,000 square feet so more businesses can change without having to go before Planning Commission. Also within design permits, currently if you are required to get a CUP, you're also required to have a design permit, or if you're making any changes to a facade, and they've told us to only for significant exterior changes should it go to Planning Commission. And also to create administrative permits and minor use permits that can be approved administratively over the counter. The other direction was to repeal the outdated 41st Avenue design guidelines. They'd like the applicable design guidelines that would still support a high-quality development on 41st to be within the design criteria for a design permit, and in the future to update those design guidelines would be on our list of to-dos for after zoning code update. The next is protecting retail vitality, so shopping on 41st Avenue. The first was to encourage professional medical office uses in certain locations. So within this, they told us to principally permit medical and office south of Capitola Road, and so that would also be, there'd still be a threshold, but making that threshold higher than the 3,000 square feet it is today. And then also north of Capitola Road, because that's our regional commercial district, to still require a conditional use permit in that area. Also to allow medical and office on second and third stories in all commercial areas. Next, when approving, they'd like us to add a finding for professional medical use, and the finding that's put in the new code should be objective and measurable. So that will be in the updated draft. This is a map just showing what their direction was to require a conditional use permit north of Capitola Road for medical and office, and then south of Capitola Road to allow it to be principally permitted.
And the yellow are?
The yellow are existing. Medical and office.
So could I ask a question? Sorry to interrupt. So we're trying to push it south of Capitola Road. Is there a reason to concentrate it there, or?
So our regional commercial center is north of Capitola Road within the general plan, and south of Capitola Road is more of our local commercial center, so that was the reasoning behind that.
So to protect one for one use, okay.
Next issue is issue 5 on parking. So this is broken up into 4 different parts. The first is parking spaces. The Planning Commission, we actually took this also to our Traffic and Parking Committee, and the Planning Commission, their recommendation was also that of the same as the Traffic and Parking Committee. So they stated that we should create location-based parking standards, and I'll get into that in a little more detail, but to have individual standards for different parts of town. So the village would have stricter standards for parking versus out on 41st Avenue where there's more available parking to not require as much parking. And also to allow reductions within parking studies, which I discussed previously with the Planning Commission approval for mixed tenant uses, that you could bring in a study to reduce the parking, and require a finding that you can't spill over into additional neighborhoods. This is how the location-based parking standards could work. You can see in the light blue the different areas of town. For retail, we could have different requirements per area, and it's really based on the available parking in different locations.
Question?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to understand more later, I suppose, how to prevent parking spilling over in other neighborhoods. I mean, that's sort of a concept on it.
Let's restrict our conversation tonight just to presentation, because we're not.
Oh, I'm
we're
sorry.
going to schedule a meeting to discuss this whole thing. Let's just carry through the presentation.
Okay. And issue 5B was the village hotel parking. Due to the unique location of the hotel within the village, the Planning Commission stated that we should base future parking on a study. It should be determined, the study should determine the number of parking spots, and there should be flexibility to create a parking demand management plan for this unique site so that they could mitigate parking needs there, and also if they were to do a shuttle system or something like that, it can all be reviewed within a parking study. On an aside, the Planning Commission asked us to bring up during our report to the City Council to reconsider the employee parking program to let employees utilize the parking facilities during winter months to decrease the impact on residents. We did have quite a few residents that came out during the discussion to talk about the ongoing parking issues within the village and mostly employees parking in front of their homes. So, parking efficiency within, currently there are two practices that we've allowed shared parking studies in the past, so that's to incorporate the shared parking studies and also to add parking lift standards within our code. So those are two more things to make parking more efficient.
Rolls-Royce and a Porsche.
Those are the kind of cars we can park with.
So issue 5D was garages. Within garages, we were asking whether or not we should limit the enclosed parking to garages only, remove the enclosed parking altogether, or create standards for carports. The Planning Commission recommendation was that we should add design standards for carports and that they should be the exception with findings to support that they are the exception, and then to include carports in the floor area calculations. So there's no longer an incentive to build a carport versus a garage in terms of floor area. Historic preservation, we provided 4 options to the Planning Commission to create a historic resource board, create a new overlay, new enforcement and penalty provisions, and also new maintenance and upkeep provisions. Also within the issues and options, we had new provisions that we had stated need to be in this updated code, and they include procedures to identify the historic resources, criteria to identify historic resources, procedures and criteria to modify a historic resource, criteria to approve the demolition, and also incentives. The Planning Commission recommended that we move forward with the 5 new provisions and not incorporate any of the options as suggested within the issue and options report. So once we have these 5 in there, we can reassess if we need a board or any other. Secondary dwelling units. The Planning Commission recommendation was to continue to encourage development of secondary dwelling units. They'd like to eliminate the residency requirement. The residency requirement is something that most jurisdictions have and are slowly taking them away. So that's that the owner either occupy the primary home or the second unit. Also, to create an allowance for a second unit above garages. Right now, secondary units are limited to a certain height and cannot be above a garage. So this would allow more design flexibility on a site for a secondary unit. They would have to meet setback requirements. Next is visitor serving uses on Depot Hill. The Planning Commission would like to modify the permitted uses on Depot Hill within the visitor serving, so this as the Monarch Cove Inn property. So currently the El Salto property is listed as visitor serving. There's a 4-plex on there. They'd like to eliminate that from the visitor serving district. Also, the area to the east of El Salto is under automatic review, and they'd like to eliminate the requirement for automatic review on those properties because they're single-family homes and they should be held to the same standard as single-family homes. Visitor serving zone, they came to consensus that it should remain on the Monarch Cove Inn property, but they'd like to modify the conditional uses that can be reviewed on the site. So here's a list of the conditional uses and prohibited uses on Monarch Cove and El Salto. The 5 items that they asked us to change were for a temporary festival, changing that from a CUP to prohibit, live entertainment, commercial entertainment and recreation, and other similar visitor serving uses to prohibit all 4. Although there is an existing conditional use permit for the site, so the existing conditional use could continue to, host weddings and have entertainment. But in the future, if that use were to change and your list of uses changes, it would be prohibited. Multifamily homes, they would like to change from a prohibited use to a conditional use. So if a new developer wanted to come in and do multifamily in that location, it could go through a conditional use, with the thought of continuing to have the single-family homes prohibited due to the impacts of nightly rental that likely the Coastal Commission would want in that area if the hotel use were to go away. So there's a very long great discussion by Planning Commission, very thoughtful, and a lot of public came out for this discussion. So, next is height in the Capitola Village. Right now there's a 27-foot maximum height limit. This is an example of a building in town that's built to 26 feet with a 28-foot chimney that's allowed. The Planning Commission recommendation was to maintain the 27-foot maximum height. They said we should include an exception for non-habitable space such as elevators and lighthouses was the example that was brought up. Next is the height for the future Village Hotel. The Planning Commission recommendation is also, because this is a very unique site, that the review should be aligned with the general plan and tied to the general plan conditions. Also to allow flexibility to make sure there's articulation and stepping and that it fits within the built environment. So that was my brief overview on the 8 items that we thought I'd go over with you tonight. I'd be happy to get direction on this either tonight of items you'd like to be brought to a special meeting, or if you'd like during the next special meeting to revisit this and provide direction either way.
Council?
So Katie, you want to hear if there's anything we want to do in the PC direction and move it to the City Council special?
Yes.
Parking is one that I'm keenly
Parking.
interested in.
Great.
There are a couple of areas there where they drifted a little bit for my taste. Other than that, a lot of good work by the Planning Commission.
Great.
I want to talk about signs at some point, just briefly.
Okay.
Not tonight, but another time.
15 and 16.
Okay.
You know, I would like to go through and review every one of these things again. I think there's discussion at our level, should discuss everything that you brought up here.
Okay.
There's a little bit of tweak in every one of these that needs to be discussed. And when you get into design standards, and you're talking about height, and you're talking about setbacks, etc., they're all really tied together. And I think what needs to be looked at is what is the structure that you're creating here in town that's so inviting by the standards we have right now. If there is something inviting about the structure we have, then we keep those standards. But if you're killing design, and you're leading us, and we're leading ourselves to deformed housing structures, this wedding cakes, let's say, that's not a good policy. And so I think that we need discussion all across the board on design issues. We're the only jurisdiction I know with a 25-foot height limit. There is no other jurisdiction. Maybe that works if you think that that's the type of design you want squattier houses, if that's what you're looking at. But I just see that besides maybe the 41st Avenue issues, I think pretty much everything on the board I'd like to just review and go through as a council. Let's take the time and do full review, just as the Planning Commission did.
I just want to acknowledge a great job done by the Planning Commission. I can see that there's a lot of input here, and there's a lot of great recommendations and a broad approach to putting more of this on staff, which is where I think we were trying to go, to try to simplify the whole process. But I agree with Dennis, there's some items we need to talk about, but I think that a bulk of the work has already been done by them, and I don't anticipate it being that difficult.
I went to 3 out of the 4 meetings, I think. And listening at all the discussion and all the views and stuff like that, I think you've done a wonderful job distilling it. I'm truly amazed. So we'll guide our discussion later, and I learned a lot at those meetings. So I'm relatively new at this, so I look forward to the next discussion.
Thank you.
So do you have enough direction here, Katie?
I think so, yeah. So we'll bring all items back except for the 41st Avenue, 2 items, and we'll also
We want to have
add
a special
signs.
meeting just to focus on these things, because it'll take a while.
Well, we're still going to have a special meeting, and we're going to have repetitive special meetings. I don't think any of this should be in any of our regular meetings, but I would respectfully request that we start the zoning special meetings in October. As full as the summer is, and as little time as we have off, by the time we finish with Opera on the Beach, I'm burnt, frankly. And I'd love to start the extra special happy meetings in October, if it's okay with the rest of the council.
Of course.
October.
I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Just don't make it the early part of October. I'm out of town.
And what we could do, Councilman Termini, is we could, either at one of the September meetings, we can come back with just a schedule for your endorsement that lays it
Great.
out a little bit clearer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rich.
It's okay, you didn't think you were going to get away with it that easy.
No.
Why do you think we kept you so late?
We've accepted your report, and we've given you adequate direction. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on, and we have one item left on our agenda, and that is a consideration of extension application for 407 A and B and 411 Beverly Avenue. Unfortunately, I will have to recluse myself because I am a neighbor and I cannot vote, and Mike Termini, I think, has to do the same.
Yeah, because I'm his neighbor. So.
Well, that's bad enough. I live closer. So, Ed, would you mind?
I'm sorry we made this last.
Bring garbage cans in, right?
That's right.
Okay. Are you guys leaving?
We're leaving. Thank you.
Okay. Tonight's application is for the review of a non-conforming multifamily structure at 407 A and B and 411 Beverly Avenue. There is an existing duplex and a single-family home on the same parcel. This is not allowed under today's code, so therefore it is non-conforming. The zoning code has a sunset clause for parcels with 3 or more units in the single-family zone. An owner is required to either come into compliance with the code or to receive an extension by the City Council. The code specifies that the use must be discontinued by 2019 or 50 years from when the use became non-conforming, whichever is later. For this specific application, the home, it became non-conforming. It wasn't constructed in 1951, but the zoning changed there in 1951, and therefore it's subject to the 2019 expiration, so quickly approaching. There is a new owner of the home, and so when she was doing her due diligence, she came in, she's here tonight, and was wondering about the home, and when we figured out it's non-conforming and its status, they immediately wanted to apply for an extension to make sure that in purchasing the home in 2019, they wouldn't have to transfer the use back to single family. So the City Council can grant an extension, but they must make 3 findings. First, the appearance, condition, and management of the property is not detrimental to the single-family residential character of the neighborhood. I will present photos this evening that will support this finding. Also, the council must find that the granting an extension will prevent a major economic loss to the property owner and lessen deterioration. The property owner currently rents 2 of the units within the property, and losing this rental income would be a major economic loss to the property and may lead to deterioration. Third, that all reasonable conditions have been imposed for the purpose of repairing dilapidation and keeping the property up to the neighborhood standards, and there are conditions tied to the permit should you choose to do the extension this evening. So here's a photo of the duplex. The duplex has 1 unit upstairs and also a unit downstairs. Each unit has 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. The trash is stored under the stairs and not visible from the street. Here's an image of the single-family home, which is on the corner. There's a detached garage, mature landscaping, and the home was placed on a new foundation within the past 20 years. It has had electrical upgrades, a new kitchen, and a remodel throughout. This slide shows the site plan. It's showing the duplex on the left and the single-family home on the corner. What you can see here is that there's 1 valid parking space within the garage. The blue line is the property line, so the other 5 spaces, which are valid 10 by 20 spaces, they're not within the property, but there is property available on within the unimproved right-of-way along the street. The owner recently let me come into the home, so I have a series of photos. This is the garden in the front of the home, and this is just to show the maintenance that's been done here. This picture is within the new kitchen at the home, and also another picture of the kitchen and the living room. So as you can see, the home was recently remodeled. These photos are of the single-family home. I also looked at the duplex, and it was in the same condition, of very well kept. So this evening, staff recommends the approval of a 50-year extension as conditioned within the staff report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Also, the applicant is here. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff? This is a public hearing. Would the applicant like to make any comment at this time?
I just want to introduce myself, LaJean Ditro. I've been a tenant for 3 years in one of the apartments. I had the opportunity to purchase it, and I'm very excited. I actually was asking for perpetuity because of the uniqueness of the property. I think value-wise and to preserve the little log cabin house, that would be beneficial. Does anybody have any questions for me?
None at this time, yeah. Just want to know if you want to make any presentation before we make a decision. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to speak?
I'm Marge Hansen. I am LaDon's neighbor diagonally through the intersection. I've been in and out of this town, as I've mentioned before at other meetings, for 35 years as a renter and a homeowner, and the structures are in better condition now than I've ever seen them. And even though she's the new owner, she has lived there for quite a bit of time, and it's well maintained. And as far as the parking issue, the city is to take the credit for that. When you put in the lower parking lot, it eliminated all our parking issues in that entire neighborhood. I no longer have to fight for a parking space for my handicap access van. So as far as LaDon's Corner, it's not an issue whatsoever, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would, well, hopefully give her the right to the duplex in perpetuity, 50 years, if that's all that you would give her. I think we'll all still be around in 50 years. She is an asset, and as are the structures to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, and especially about the parking. So do we have a motion?
I went to the workshop that you put on and saw the review and looked at the placards and stuff like that. So I'm very impressed with the care that the owner, that the past owner took. So this is a situation we like. And I would move to accept the staff's report, which is a 50-year extension.
Second.
Do you have any comments?
No.
Okay, we'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And with that, we'll be adjourned for the evening.
I do have a question. I'm awfully sorry. I note across the street, I didn't think this was a residence, a visitor serving area. There's a vacation rental sign on the house right across the street. So I just wonder if someone could check into that.
Okay, we can check into that, and we've been working on an inventory, so I'll add that to the...
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah, the stability of the neighborhood, I don't know what neighbors feel about that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if it's pertinent.
Come on up.
Yes.
The couple who lives in that house now have leased it for a year. And so that stability is great. I'd like to see them stay longer, but they want to actually buy a house in Capitola. I would really like to see you keep a closer eye on that one and enforce the codes.
That's the main point, yes.
Because, this couple is fine, and the previous family actually wanted to stay longer. Before that, it was a zoo. And I think they were violating every code that you could possibly throw at them without any regard whatsoever for the neighborhood. So people like this couple and the family that's in there now, definitely a positive influence on the neighborhood before that. So that particular property management company is well down on my list for taking care of the neighborhood. so.
Well, thank you. We've been getting some complaints about vacation rentals, and I think our staff is looking into that, so it's come under our radar, so thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
Steph, you want to say something?
I just want to say, please call us anytime if you notice anything irregular in your neighborhood. We're very happy to take your comments, and just leave us a message if you like, or send us an email.
Come on back up. You've waited all night, you can speak.
It's killing me. I had 2 tenants that were going to come speak, but they went night-night. So anyway, it was positive stuff. About the rental across the street, there's a motorhome that parks out there sometimes, and I know I'm being held to hiding my trash cans. They never remove theirs. I have to look out my window, the trash cans are out there, nobody holds them to any standards. And I would like to see some kind of code enforcement.
You're welcome to, I can work with you on that to start a code enforcement.
Good.
And
There's more than that in the neighborhood. I just get a little frustrated that I have to, like...
Feel free to call the planning department. They'll assist you with anything you need. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, with that, we'll be adjourned till our next meeting. The city council will take a break on the meeting in August. There'll be no meeting on August 27th. We'll all be back in session on September 10th. After the Begonia Festival, please come out and enjoy the Begonia Festival and have a great time. Thank you. Good night, Capitola.